Hello there and welcome to Life Beyond Seen, where curiosity drifts quietly in the dark and wonder waits just beneath the surface. Tonight we're leaving behind ticking clocks and sunlit questions to wander into the coldest corners of the ocean, a place so hidden that even today, with satellites mapping distant planets and robots rolling across Martian soil, we still know almost nothing about what waits below. And down there, somewhere in that blackness where pressure would crush a submarine like an empty soda can, lives a creature that has haunted imagination for centuries. Some call it the ruler of the abyss. Some picture it as a monster with writhing arms tearing ships apart. And science, careful and cautious, calls it simply the Colossal Squid. It's one of the largest living invertebrates ever found. A being with eyes bigger than a dinner plate, and a beak strong enough to slice through flesh and bone. Yet for all its size and all its power, it remains mostly a shadow. We've never seen one alive in its natural world for more than a few moments. We've only glimpsed it in fragments, in pieces washed ashore, in the stomachs of its predators, or in brief, grainy footage captured in remote waters. For a creature so big, it's astonishing how much of it slips away into mystery. Wherever you're listening right now, perhaps in the quiet of your bedroom or sitting with a cup of tea, I'd like you to pause and imagine something. Imagine the deepest darkness you've ever seen. Not the darkness of a power outage in your neighbourhood, not even the blackout of a moonless night in the countryside, but a darkness so absolute that light itself can't travel very far through it. That's where the Colossal Squid lives. Does that kind of place sound exciting to you, or does it give you a shiver? I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is for you right now. Somehow it feels fitting to ask that, doesn't it? Here we are, you and I, connected by voices and curiosity, while the subject before us is a creature that doesn't measure time the way we do, doesn't rise and set with the sun the way we must, but instead lives in a world where days and nights blur into endless twilight, a realm where survival depends not on clocks or calendars, but on the faint glow of passing prey, the vibrations of distant movements, and instincts honed over millions of years. If you find this journey calming, or fascinating, or maybe even a good way to let your thoughts slow after a long day, it would mean a lot if you gave this a like or subscribed. That way this little corner of calm can reach others who might need it too. And now, if you're ready, let's take that first step downward. Because to understand the Colossal Squid, we need to imagine ourselves not as surface dwellers bound to sunlight, but as visitors moving slowly, carefully into the abyss. The story of the Colossal Squid begins, in some ways, with what humans didn't understand. Long before scientists had words like Architeuthis or Mesonicoteuthis to describe giant squids and colossal squids, sailors carried tales of beasts that lived beneath their ships. The ocean has always been both a provider and a terror. It gives food and trade routes, but it hides dangers no one can predict. When a vessel rocked violently or disappeared without reason, when whales surfaced with scars across their bodies, when strange shapes floated to the top of the water after storms, it was easy to believe that something monstrous was responsible. Those stories travelled across centuries and across cultures. The Norse people told of the Kraken, so large it could pull ships under with its arms. In Mediterranean myths there were sea serpents and leviathans. In the Pacific, oral traditions spoke of giant creatures beneath the waves. Again and again, in places oceans apart, humans imagined giants of the deep. And though these legends exaggerated what they saw, they weren't entirely wrong. There really was something down there with tentacles, with a powerful beak, with a size that stretched the imagination. But the truth, as usual, was stranger and harder to catch than the stories. The colossal squid differs from the giant squid, though the two are often confused. The giant squid, Architeuthis, is long and slender, with arms and tentacles that can stretch over 10 meters. The colossal squid, Mesonicoteuthis, is stockier, heavier, with hooks on its tentacles instead of just suckers, and eyes so large they dwarf those of any other creature. Scientists believe the colossal squid is not only larger in weight than the giant squid, but also uniquely adapted for life in the deep Southern Ocean, around Antarctica, where waters are cold, dark and unforgiving. But here's the thing that makes this creature so remarkable in our story tonight. Despite its size, despite its power, despite centuries of human curiosity, we still barely know it. Think about that. We've sent astronauts into space. We've landed probes on comets. We've mapped the DNA of humans and countless other species. And yet, this enormous animal living right here on Earth remains a ghost in the dark. Why do we know so little? It comes down to where it lives. The deep sea is one of the most inaccessible habitats on the planet. Pressure increases dramatically the deeper you go, making exploration costly and dangerous. Sunlight disappears within a few hundred meters, leaving the abyss in perpetual night. Temperatures hover just above freezing, and the colossal squid has chosen this world as its home. That means almost every bit of knowledge we have comes not from observing it alive, but from accidents. A squid caught on a fishing line meant for something else. A carcass washing ashore. The remains inside the stomach of a sperm whale. Every piece of data we hold is like a puzzle piece without the picture on the box. We can make educated guesses, but the whole creature remains elusive. There's something humbling in that, don't you think? That in an age of technology and instant information, there are still mysteries so vast they remind us how small we really are. That even as you sit here, listening comfortably, there are beings alive right now, moving silently through a darkness we'll never fully touch. The colossal squid may never be an animal we keep in aquariums. It may never be filmed in its natural world for more than fleeting moments. It exists at the edges of our reach, and that is part of what makes it so compelling. When we talk about it tonight, we're not just talking about biology, we're talking about imagination, about fear, about curiosity. We're talking about a creature that has always lived partly in fact and partly in legend. And so, as we begin, think of this as both a scientific journey and a quiet story. A chance to drift together into the unknown, guided not by certainty but by wonder, because somewhere down there, in the cold abyss, the phantom ruler waits. And though we may never fully know it, perhaps the act of searching tells us something important about ourselves. When people first ventured out across the world's oceans, they carried with them both courage and fear. Imagine being on a wooden ship hundreds of years ago, with no engines, no GPS, no weather radar, just sails, stars and instinct. The sea was enormous, unpredictable, and to most almost entirely unknown. It's no wonder then that sailors began to tell stories of things lurking beneath the waves. When a storm came suddenly, when a ship vanished without a trace, when strange marks appeared on the skin of whales or on the hull of a vessel that returned battered but afloat, there had to be an explanation. And in the absence of science, the explanation was often a monster. Some of the earliest stories came from the Norse. They spoke of the kraken, a creature so massive it could be mistaken for an island. Sailors claimed it would rise from the depths, create whirlpools, and drag entire ships down to their doom. If you picture men on small, open-deck boats braving the cold North Atlantic, it makes sense why such a legend grew. The ocean seemed endless, powerful, and frightening, and the animals within it were unlike anything people saw on land. A whale surfacing without warning could look like a moving island. A squid's long arms might be glimpsed for a second before sliding away, just long enough to burn themselves into memory. Mix that with human imagination and fear, and the kraken became a story worth repeating. Mediterranean sailors too told of leviathans. In biblical texts, the leviathan was described as a terrifying sea serpent, an embodiment of chaos itself. Greek myths spoke of Scylla, a multi-headed sea monster waiting in a strait to snatch sailors from their ships. In each case, the message was clear. The ocean was dangerous, and something lived within it that humans were powerless to fight. These stories spread not only by word of mouth, but also in written accounts, travel journals and maps. Old maps, in fact, are covered in drawings of sea creatures. Cartographers filled blank spaces with illustrations of serpents, whales, and tentacled beasts. Here be dragons, they warned, marking the unknown with monsters. It wasn't only in Europe. Across the Pacific, the Maori of New Zealand told of a giant sea creature called the Te Weka Muturangi, a monstrous octopus said to roam the waters and attack canoes. In Japanese folklore, tales of enormous octopuses and squids also appear, sometimes as trickster figures, sometimes as deadly dangers. Everywhere sailors went, stories of giant tentacled animals followed. Some were exaggerated, some purely symbolic, but woven through them is a thread of truth. Because every now and then, something strange really did wash ashore. Imagine being a villager living by the sea hundreds of years ago. After a storm, you find a mass of strange flesh tangled in seaweed. It's pale, rubbery, with long arms trailing behind it, and at the centre, sharp, parrot-like beak. You've never seen anything like it. To you, it looks monstrous. And because no one could explain it, the only words available were those of myth. A sea monster, a demon of the deep, a warning from the gods. These occasional encounters only fueled the legends. Of course, we know now that many of these mysterious remains were pieces of giant squid, or sometimes whales, or other large sea life. But to those who discovered them, they were evidence that something vast and powerful lived out of sight. And with each retelling, the creatures grew larger. Sailors love stories, and the sea provided the perfect stage. A giant squid seen once could become, by the next harbour tavern, a beast that lifted ships out of the water. The kraken, the leviathan, the great sea serpent. Different names, different cultures, but always the same fear. That the ocean was not just deep, but alive with monsters. Even as ships grew sturdier and voyages became longer, the stories didn't fade. In fact, the age of exploration brought new encounters. Sailors crossing the Indian Ocean, rounding the tip of Africa, or braving the Southern Ocean, all came back with reports of strange things glimpsed in the water. Christopher Columbus himself wrote about seeing strange creatures during his voyages. Were they squids? Were they whales? Were they just misidentified fish seen in poor light? We can't know for sure, but every account added fuel to the fire. The fascinating thing is that many of these tales, however exaggerated, match up with the real characteristics of the colossal squid and its cousin, the giant squid. Both have enormous eyes that reflect light eerily in the dark. Both have tentacles that can reach incredible lengths. Both live far below the surface, rising occasionally toward the top. For sailors who spent weeks staring at endless waves, catching even a glimpse of such a thing would leave a memory so vivid it had to be told, and told again, and never forgotten. In the 19th century, as whaling became more common, more direct evidence began to appear. Whales, especially sperm whales, often surfaced with long scars and sucker marks across their skin. These weren't the marks of sharks or other whales. They were circular impressions, sometimes several inches across, arranged in lines along the whale's body. They told a story without words. Deep beneath the waves, whales and giant squids battled. The whales hunted the squids, but the squids fought back with their powerful arms, leaving scars like hieroglyphs carved into the skin. To sailors who saw these marks up close, there could be no doubt. Monsters did exist, even if they rarely revealed themselves. It's easy for us now, with submarines, cameras and scientific names, to look back and smile at these old tales. But the truth is, those sailors weren't entirely wrong. There really was a creature in the deep, one so elusive that even today it resists our attempts to understand it, and the stories they told, however embellished, kept that mystery alive long enough for science to eventually catch up. What's interesting about these old sea monster accounts is how they reflect not just fear, but also respect. Sailors didn't just tell these stories to frighten each other. They told them to make sense of a world they couldn't control. The ocean was vast and unpredictable, and the creatures within it were reminders that humans were small, fragile, and temporary. To imagine a giant squid dragging a ship beneath the waves wasn't just to imagine a monster. It was to accept that the sea itself was bigger than us, more powerful than us, and perhaps always would be. As more ships travelled farther, some sailors began to describe the monsters not just in terrifying terms, but with a kind of awe. To see something so enormous, so strange, so alien, it was frightening, yes, but also humbling. These weren't just threats, they were symbols of the unknown, living proof that there were still things on Earth beyond the reach of human knowledge. And that feeling, that mix of fear and wonder, is exactly what the colossal squid still inspires today. Even now, when we tell stories of it, we're not just talking about anatomy or hunting behaviour. We're tapping into the same awe that sailors felt when they looked over the side of their ships and wondered what waited beneath. The colossal squid is, in many ways, the last sea monster that still feels real, not because it's a monster, but because it remains hidden, powerful, and mysterious in a world where very few things still do. When humans look out at the ocean, it has always been a mirror for the imagination. Long before we had sonar or remotely operated vehicles, long before any photograph of a squid's eye had been captured, people filled the gaps in their knowledge with stories. The myths and legends of sea monsters are not just old fairy tales, but echoes of something deeper, our need to explain what frightened us, what humbled us, and what seemed to defy all ordinary understanding. And among those legends, few are as enduring as the kraken, the leviathan, and the many other creatures said to wait in the dark. The kraken is perhaps the most famous. Originating in Norse sagas, it was described as a beast so large that when it surfaced, sailors mistook its back for an island. They would row ashore, light fires, and only later realise the ground beneath them was moving. The monster would then sink into the sea, dragging the men to their deaths. Accounts from the 13th century tell of ships lured into whirlpools created by its descent. It was said that its tentacles could reach the top of a mast, wrap around a ship and pull it under in seconds. To the Norse, who sailed in wooden vessels across dangerous northern waters, such a monster embodied the chaos of the sea itself. What makes the kraken fascinating is how it blends exaggeration with kernels of truth. We know now that giant squid and colossal squid can grow to lengths beyond most animals' imagination. They do have tentacles capable of gripping and holding with incredible strength. They live in regions where Norwegian sailors would have travelled, and whirlpools, well, the ocean has plenty of those created by strong currents and underwater features. To a sailor trying to explain what he saw, it would have made perfect sense to connect a whirlpool with an unseen monster. Add a glimpse of a tentacle or a strange carcass washing ashore, and suddenly the kraken had all the details it needed to live in stories for centuries. Further south, in the Mediterranean, the leviathan was whispered about in hushed tones. In the Hebrew Bible, it appears as a monstrous sea serpent, a creature of terrifying strength, chaos embodied in the water. Descriptions vary, but it was often depicted as enormous, armoured with scales, breathing fire, or wielding multiple heads. It was less a natural animal than a symbol of destruction and divine power. For ancient peoples, the Leviathan was not just a monster, it was an explanation for why the sea was dangerous, why storms rose suddenly, why ships never returned. It was both literal and metaphorical, a way to give the ocean a face, however terrifying. Greek mythology added its own gallery of sea beasts. Scylla, for instance, was said to live on one side of a narrow strait, waiting to snatch sailors from their ships with her snapping heads. Across from her lived Charybdis, a great whirlpool that sucked ships beneath the waves. These legends weren't just entertaining stories, they were also cautionary tales. Passing through dangerous waters was easier to remember if you told it as a story about monsters. Sailors could pass warnings to each other without charts or modern navigation tools, describing hazards in terms of Scylla's teeth or Charybdis's whirlpool. Even outside Europe, the oceans were full of mythical inhabitants. In Polynesian traditions, There were tales of giant octopuses and squids, sometimes tricksters, sometimes deadly forces of nature. In Japan, the Akora Kamuya was said to be a massive octopus living in Funka Bay, large enough to capsize ships. In each of these cases, the legends reveal the same human impulse. When the sea shows you something enormous and unfamiliar, you give it a name, a story, and a place in your understanding of the world. What's remarkable about many of these legends is how much they overlap. Cultures separated by oceans and languages still described monsters with long arms, enormous size, and a tendency to drag ships under. The details differ. Some say squid, some say serpent, some say a hybrid beast. But the themes are the same, and that suggests that while imagination certainly exaggerated, there may have been shared real-world inspirations. When whales breached suddenly, when squid carcasses floated to the surface, when storms tore ships apart, the explanations converged. The unknown became monstrous, and the monstrous became legend. It's easy for us now, sitting safely with knowledge and technology, to treat these legends as exaggerations of frightened minds. But that risks missing something important. For the people who told these stories, they weren't just entertainment, they were tools of survival. Saying "beware the Kraken" might have been a way of warning others about treacherous waters. Describing Leviathan as chaos incarnate was a way of acknowledging that the sea could never truly be mastered. Even in their most fanciful forms, these legends carried wisdom. And still, when you read the old descriptions, you can't help but feel a flicker of recognition. The giant eyes, the long arms, the power to fight whales and leave marks on their skin. These aren't entirely inventions. They're hints, blurred and amplified, of creatures that do exist. The Kraken may not be exactly as the Norse described, but the colossal squid comes close enough to remind us why those stories took root so easily. One of the most enduring qualities of these myths is how they blur the line between awe and fear. The sea monsters of legend are terrifying, yes, but also magnificent. The Kraken is dangerous, but it's also majestic in its scale. Leviathan is a symbol of chaos, but it also represents the raw power of creation. Even today, when we imagine these creatures, there's a part of us that admires them. They embody a kind of freedom, a life beyond our reach, unbound by the surface and untouched by our control. And perhaps that's why they've endured. Even in an age of satellites and submarines, we still tell stories of sea monsters. They've moved from sailors' journals to novels, films, and video games, but they still hold the same place in our imagination. They remind us that there are places in the world we can't fully explain, creatures we can't fully tame, and mysteries that will always slip just beyond our grasp. The colossal squid, though a real animal, carries the weight of these myths with it. Every time we speak of it, we borrow a little of the Kraken's terror, a little of Leviathan's chaos, a little of Scylla's hunger. We treat it as both an animal and a symbol, both flesh and legend. And in that way, the myths are not separate from the science. They're a reflection of the same human need to understand the unknown, to give it shape, and to keep telling stories about it. Even if we one day capture clear footage of the colossal squid in its natural habitat, even if we map its life cycle and measure every detail of its anatomy, the legends won't disappear. They'll simply evolve, merging old fears with new knowledge. The Kraken won't vanish just because we know it's a squid. The Leviathan won't fade simply because we can describe pressure, temperature, and abyssal ecosystems. These creatures live as much in our imagination as in the sea, and that's a realm no research vessel can ever fully chart. So when you hear the word Kraken, when you picture a monster rising from the waves, dragging ships into the deep, remember that behind that image is both a myth and a truth. The myth is the exaggeration, the story spun in fear and wonder. The truth is the colossal squid, still living in darkness, still hidden, still reminding us that the ocean has secrets older than any map or book. The two are not enemies. They're partners in the long, strange relationship between humans and the sea. And as we move forward into our journey tonight, keep that in mind. The colossal squid is not just an animal. It is the living echo of centuries of myth, a creature that continues to remind us that the line between legend and reality is thinner than we often think. For centuries, sea monsters lived mostly in the realm of stories. They were painted on maps, whispered in taverns, written into scripture, and carried across oceans on the lips of sailors. But eventually, curiosity began to shift from myth to measurement. People started asking not just what if, but what exactly. And that marks the beginning of science stepping in, the long and sometimes clumsy attempt to separate imagination from reality in the search for a real giant. The turning point came slowly. In the 18th and 19th centuries, European naturalists began cataloguing the natural world with a new kind of precision. They wanted to name, classify, and understand every living thing. Plants, birds, insects, mammals, all were being organised into neat systems of taxonomy. But the sea was always harder to pin down. Most of what people knew came from fishermen and sailors, whose accounts often sounded too wild for the careful language of science. Yet there were clues that something extraordinary was out there. One of the earliest pieces of physical evidence came in the form of beaks. The colossal squid and its cousin, the giant squid, both have large, sharp beaks made of chitin, the same material as a crab's shell. These beaks resist digestion, even when the rest of the animal is consumed. And where were they found? Inside the stomachs of sperm whales. Whalers who cut open the bellies of these enormous predators often reported finding squid beaks by the dozens, sometimes even hundreds. The conclusion was unavoidable. Sperm whales, themselves the size of small ships, were feeding on creatures so large that their remains filled stomachs the size of rooms. The whales carried the scars too, deep circular sucker marks etched into their skin, like tattoos from a hidden war. To any observer it was obvious. There was a battle taking place in the deep between giants we could see and giants we could not. By the mid-19th century, scientists were willing to admit that perhaps the old sailors had not been entirely wrong. In 1857, a Danish naturalist named Peter Steenstrup made a breakthrough. He carefully examined squid beaks found in Wales and compared them with the remains of smaller squid species already known to science. From this, he described a new species, Architeuthis, the giant squid. For the first time, the sea monster had a scientific name. It wasn't a kraken anymore, it was Architeuthis dux. The world suddenly had to face the fact that what had once been dismissed as myth was rooted in reality. But naming the giant squid was only the first step. Finding one intact proved far more difficult. Every so often carcasses washed up on beaches, but they were usually badly damaged. Fishermen caught pieces in their nets, tentacles, fragments of mantle, but never the whole creature alive. The deep sea protected its secrets well. Imagine the frustration of knowing an animal the size of a bus existed, but only ever encountering it in scraps. Science thrives on specimens, and here was a specimen that seemed determined to remain a phantom. New Zealand became one of the key locations where evidence turned up. The waters around it, especially the Southern Ocean, are home to both giant squid and colossal squid. In 1887, a massive squid carcass washed ashore in New Zealand, measuring over 17 metres. Newspapers reported it with the same breathless excitement as a modern UFO sighting. Scientists measured, photographed and preserved parts of it, though the ocean had already done its damage. Still, each discovery built the case. Whatever lived down there was larger, stranger and more real than anyone had guessed. Through the 20th century, the hunt continued. Whalers kept reporting squid beaks. Fishermen occasionally pulled up enormous tentacles, sometimes still twitching. Scientists dissected every fragment they could find, trying to piece together the biology of the animal. But one question haunted them. Was there an even larger cousin out there? Something heavier, more powerful than Architeuthis? Reports suggested there was, and it eventually received a name of its own, Mesonichoteuthis hamiltoni, the colossal squid. For a long time, Mesonychoteuthis was even more elusive than its giant relative. First described in 1925, it was identified not from a full specimen, but from two small tentacle fragments taken from a sperm whale's stomach. Think about that for a moment. An entire species, one of the largest invertebrates on Earth, known only from scraps eaten by another animal. It's as if you tried to describe a lion based solely on claw marks found in the belly of a crocodile. Yet even from those fragments, scientists could tell this was no ordinary squid. The hooks on its tentacles were unique. The size of the parts suggested an animal bulkier, heavier and more powerful than the giant squid. For decades after that, the colossal squid remained almost invisible. A few more fragments turned up, but no intact specimens. It was like chasing a rumour across oceans. Scientists published papers speculating on its size and habits, but always with the caveat that so much was unknown. It wasn't until 2003 that a fishing vessel in the Ross Sea caught the first subadult colossal squid. It was about 2.5 metres long, hardly small by ordinary standards, but far from the maximum size suspected. Then, in 2007, another vessel hauled up something extraordinary. A colossal squid weighing nearly 500 kilograms and measuring over 4 metres long, with tentacles extending even farther. For the first time, the world saw a nearly intact adult colossal squid. Scientists in New Zealand carefully preserved it, and news outlets everywhere covered the discovery. The monster of legend had finally entered the laboratory. That specimen confirmed what had long been suspected. The colossal squid is shorter in length than the giant squid, but far heavier. While Archaeoteuthis can stretch to more than 10 metres thanks to its long, thin tentacles, Mesonychoteuthis is stockier, with a mantle that's thicker and more muscular. Some estimates suggest it could reach weights over 600 or even 700 kilograms. Its eyes are the largest known in the animal kingdom, measuring up to 30 centimetres across, so big they could detect faint light from distant shapes moving in the blackness. And those hooks on its tentacles, sharp and rotating, gave it a weapon no other squid could match. Still, despite finally having a specimen in hand, the questions only multiplied. How did it hunt? How fast could it move? Did it ambush prey or actively chase it? How often did it battle sperm whales? And how many survived those encounters? The deep sea keeps its answers locked away. Remote-operated submersibles have managed to film giant squid alive, but the colossal squid remains stubbornly absent from our video libraries. The few we've captured have all been dead or dying, brought to the surface by accident. It's as if the abyss itself is conspiring to protect its ruler. The scientific hunt continues in fits and starts. Biologists examine beaks collected from whales, measuring their size to estimate the maximum dimensions of the squid. Each larger beak hints at a larger individual, suggesting that the biggest specimens might be even more massive than the one caught in 2007. Marine researchers use deep-sea cameras, baited hooks, and new technologies, hoping to capture footage. Yet so far, the colossal squid remains camera-shy. Every attempt to study it in its world ends with blurred images, broken equipment, or empty waters. This is what makes the story of the colossal squid so unusual in modern science. Most large animals on Earth have been studied in detail. We've tagged whales, tracked sharks, filmed lions, and sequenced the DNA of countless species. But here is a creature as large as a truck, still mostly unknown. We don't know how it reproduces, how long it lives, how many exist, or even exactly how big the largest can grow. Science has stepped in, yes, but it has only cracked the door to a room that's still almost entirely dark. And maybe that's part of the fascination. The colossal squid stands as a reminder that even with all our tools, some mysteries remain beyond reach. That doesn't mean we stop trying. It means we keep looking, keep questioning, keep piecing together clues from scars on whales and fragments in nets. Because every time we find a new piece, the picture becomes clearer and the legend becomes more real. In a way, the scientific search for the colossal squid is the continuation of those old sailors' tales. The language has changed, the tools have improved, but the impulse is the same. To explain what we glimpse, to name what we fear, to understand what lies just beyond the horizon. The difference is that now, when we tell the story, we hold in our hands a beak, a tentacle, a specimen preserved in a tank in New Zealand. The monster has a name, a classification, and a weight recorded on a scale, and yet it remains as mysterious as ever. So the hunt goes on. Somewhere beneath the Ross Sea, in the cold, crushing dark, the colossal squid is still living, still moving, still eluding us. Science has given us a glimpse, but not the whole truth. And as we continue, we'll see how that mixture of knowledge and mystery makes this creature not only a marvel of biology, but also a mirror of our endless curiosity. When you hear the phrase colossal squid, it's easy to imagine size and leave it at that. A giant, a monster, something huge in the dark. But what makes this animal so fascinating isn't just that it's large, it's how its body has been shaped by the abyss it calls home. Every part of it, from the tip of its tentacles to the sharp edges of its beak, to those eyes that rank as the largest of any living creature, tells a story about survival in one of the most hostile places on Earth. To understand why the colossal squid inspires such awe, we have to look closely at the pieces that make it what it is. Let's start with the most notorious part, the beak. Unlike a fish, the colossal squid doesn't have bones or jaws. Its body is soft, pliable, mostly muscle and tissue. But at the centre, where its arms meet, sits a beak made of chitin. Chitin is tough stuff. It's the same material that forms the hard shell of a crab or the outer armour of an insect. Imagine a parrot's beak, but scaled up to terrifying proportions, sharp enough to slice through flesh, strong enough to dismember prey that might itself be quite large. This beak is the only part of the squid that survives digestion when a sperm whale swallows it. That's why scientists find so many beaks in whale stomachs. They're natural records, indestructible calling cards of the colossal squid's existence. The beak works like a set of shears. The upper and lower halves fit together with precision, cutting into prey with efficiency. Behind it lies a tongue-like organ called the radula, studded with rows of tiny teeth, which helps shred food before it passes into the esophagus. Now picture the situation. In the crushing dark, a colossal squid seizes something with its tentacles, draws it toward its arms, and then the beak slices into it. The food might be fish, smaller squid, perhaps even sharks that wander too close. We don't know the full menu, but whatever it eats, the beak ensures it doesn't escape. For an animal living where energy is scarce, where every meal is a rare opportunity, having a weapon this efficient makes survival possible. But the beak is just the beginning. Stretching out from the squid's body are 8 arms and 2 tentacles. The arms are shorter, thicker, each lined with powerful suckers that can grip with incredible force. The tentacles are longer, specialized tools designed to reach out, seize and reel prey in. On most squid species, the tentacles end in pads covered with suckers. On the colossal squid, those pads are different. They carry swiveling hooks. Imagine a grappling hook crossed with a meat cleaver, except biological, retractable, and covered in sharp points. Some of the hooks rotate, able to twist into flesh, while others remain fixed. Together they form an arsenal built not just for grabbing, but for cutting and tearing. It's one thing to picture a squid's arm covered in suction cups. That image alone is intimidating, but to imagine hooks, rotating and embedded, makes it clear why this creature has earned the title of Phantom Ruler of the Abyss. When a colossal squid strikes, it's not simply holding its prey, it's injuring it, anchoring it, ensuring escape is nearly impossible. Fishermen who have accidentally hauled up parts of these tentacles describe them as nightmarish, covered in curved hooks that glint under the light even after the animal is long dead. And yet, as frightening as they sound, these adaptations are practical. In the dark, where prey might be scarce and fast-moving, the squid can't afford to miss. It has to grab and hold on the first try. Evolution has given it the tools to do just that. Now, the arms and tentacles are not just weapons, they're sensors too. They're covered with chemoreceptors, structures that allow the squid to taste and smell through touch. Imagine reaching out into the dark with your hand and being able to sense chemicals in the water, detecting what kind of animal brushed past you. The squid's limbs extend its awareness beyond sight, giving it a chance to find prey even when light is absent. For an animal living in near total darkness, this ability is as valuable as eyes. Speaking of eyes, this is perhaps the most extraordinary feature of all. The colossal squid has the largest eyes known in the animal kingdom, measuring up to 30 centimetres across, about the size of a dinner plate, think about that. Eyes larger than those of whales, larger than those of any other animal, built not for beauty but for function. Why so big? The answer lies in the environment. In the deep sea, light is scarce. Sunlight disappears entirely a few hundred metres down. Below that, the only light comes from bioluminescence, faint flashes from small creatures, or the dim silhouettes of large animals moving above. Large eyes allow the squid to capture every possible photon, every scrap of light available. With eyes that big, it can detect movement from great distances, like the shadow of a sperm whale approaching. Scientists studying these eyes suggest they evolved specifically to spot the faint glow of bioluminescent plankton disturbed by large predators. Imagine being able to see not the predator itself, but the glowing trail it leaves behind, a warning sign flickering in the dark. With this advantage, the colossal squid has a chance to slip away before becoming a whale's next meal. The structure of the eyes themselves is complex. They have large lenses to focus light and specialized retinas that can detect both brightness and movement. In an environment where most creatures are small and faintly glowing, the colossal squid's eyes are like high-powered telescopes tuned to darkness. They don't just see shapes, they sense patterns of light that most animals would miss entirely. In practical terms, that means the colossal squid can hunt more effectively and avoid being hunted itself. In the abyss, sight is survival, and no animal sees better than this one. But even with all this anatomy laid out, much of the colossal squid remains a puzzle. We've never observed one hunting in the wild. We've never watched it swim freely for long. The few specimens we've examined were either damaged, frozen, or already dead. That leaves enormous gaps in our understanding. For example, how powerful is its bite really? How much force can those hooks apply? How sensitive are the receptors on its arms? These are questions that linger, waiting for the rare moment when we finally see one alive and behaving naturally. Another detail that adds to the mystery is the squid's musculature. Unlike the giant squid, which is long and slender, the colossal squid is stockier. Its mantle is shorter but far thicker. This suggests it's built for bursts of power rather than long chases. Some scientists speculate it's more of an ambush predator than a pursuer. With powerful arms, a crushing beak, and eyes capable of spotting prey from far away, it may lie in wait, striking suddenly when something drifts too close. Its anatomy hints at a lifestyle shaped by patience, efficiency, and overwhelming force when the opportunity arises. Even its circulatory system reflects the strangeness of deep-sea life. Like other cephalopods, the colossal squid has 3 hearts, 2 branchial hearts that pump blood through the gills, and 1 systemic heart that pushes it through the rest of the body. Its blood is blue, coloured by copper-based hemocyanin rather than iron-based hemoglobin. This makes it more efficient at carrying oxygen in cold, low-oxygen environments. In other words, every part of its body, down to the chemistry of its blood, is tuned for the abyss. The colossal squid also carries a gladius, an internal structure sometimes called a pen. Made of chitin, it runs along the mantle and provides support for the otherwise soft body. In smaller squid, this helps maintain shape and aid swimming. In the colossal squid, it's proportionally larger, suggesting it plays a key role in keeping such a massive creature streamlined enough to move through the water. But again, without live observation, We don't know exactly how it swims. Does it cruise slowly with fins conserving energy? Does it jet powerfully when threatened? These remain educated guesses stitched together from anatomy and comparison with related species. Then there's the question of size. How large can these anatomical features get? The largest specimen caught weighed close to 500 kilograms, but beak measurements suggest individuals may grow even larger, perhaps up to 700 or 750 kilograms. That would make them heavier than a horse, bulkier than a polar bear, all muscle and weaponry moving silently in the dark. Eyes that size, hooks that sharp, a beak that indestructible. It's not surprising that people once imagined them as monsters. Even today, with the language of science, the colossal squid's anatomy still feels like something out of myth. What makes this anatomy especially fascinating is how it reflects a balance between predator and prey. Every feature that makes the colossal squid fearsome, the beak, the hooks, the massive eyes, also reflects the threats it faces. Those eyes aren't just for hunting, they're for spotting sperm whales. Those hooks aren't just for seizing prey, they're for fighting back when a predator attacks. Its anatomy tells a story of constant tension, a life lived in a battlefield invisible to us, where giants clash in silence and darkness. And perhaps that's why the colossal squid holds such a grip on our imagination. When you picture it, you're not just seeing an animal, you're seeing evolution's answer to one of the harshest environments on Earth. You're seeing a body built for survival against odds we can barely imagine, and the more we study it, the more questions we find waiting in those eyes that gleam like galaxies in the dark. When people first hear that the colossal squid has the largest eyes of any animal on the planet, it sounds almost like an exaggeration. After all, whales are bigger, elephants are bigger, even some fish species seem enormous, so why should a squid hidden in the deep hold this strange record? But the truth is that its eyes are unmatched, each one reaching up to 30 centimeters across, wider than a human head, bigger than a soccer ball, so large that if you were standing face to face with one, you might feel as if you were staring at a pale planet floating in the dark. These eyes are not oversized ornaments. They are tools of survival, evolved for a world where light barely exists. To understand why those eyes are so enormous, you need to picture the environment the colossal squid lives in. Sunlight fades after the first few hundred meters of ocean. By the time you pass 1,000 meters, the world is in perpetual night. Below that, in the zone where the colossal squid spends much of its life, there is no natural light at all, except for what living creatures produce themselves through bioluminescence. Tiny organisms glow when disturbed. Fish carry lantern-like lures. Jellyfish shimmer faintly in the dark. It's a world made not of daylight and shadow, but of sparks and flickers. In such a place, eyes must be extraordinary to be useful. The colossal squid's enormous eyes collect every possible photon, every scrap of light drifting in that vast darkness. Think of a telescope built to gather faint signals from distant galaxies. The larger the lens, the more light it captures. That's exactly how the squid's eyes work. With pupils as wide as dinner plates and lenses thick as glass marbles, they are designed to amplify the faintest glimmers until they become visible. What's even more remarkable is that these eyes are tuned not just for brightness, but for contrast. In a world where objects are mostly invisible, what matters is spotting the faint outline of something moving where nothing should be. Researchers studying the colossal squid's eyes believe they have a very particular function, detecting the approach of sperm whales. Sperm whales are the main predator of giant and colossal squids, and they hunt by diving deep, sometimes down to 2,000 meters, navigating with sonar. When they swim through schools of tiny bioluminescent organisms, their massive bodies leave a trail of faint glowing disturbance in the water. A smaller eye might miss it, but a colossal squid's enormous eyes can catch it. Imagine seeing not the predator itself, but the glowing wake it leaves behind. That means the squid can react, perhaps jetting away or curling into defensive posture before the whale gets close enough to strike. This is survival on a grand scale, an arms race between predator and prey. The whale develops sonar to hunt in the dark. The squid develops eyes so large they can see the whale coming even when the whale itself is invisible. Every scar on a whale's skin tells us the squid doesn't always escape, but the fact that it survives at all is proof that those eyes give it a fighting chance. But the eyes are not only for defense, they're also weapons for hunting. Prey in the deep is scarce and fast. Fish dart past in the gloom, sometimes giving themselves away only by the faint shimmer of their scales or the flicker of a bioluminescent organ. To catch them, the squid must see what others miss. Its eyes don't just look for light, they look for movement, for patterns in the blackness. Think about walking into a dark room with only a tiny candle. You can't see the furniture clearly, but you can detect when something moves. For the squid, that faint motion might be dinner. The structure of these eyes is as fascinating as their size. The lens is nearly spherical, perfectly designed to focus light onto the retina. The retina itself is massive, with a dense arrangement of light-sensitive cells capable of detecting the faintest signals. Some researchers suggest that the squid can even adjust the focus of its eyes to switch between different kinds of vision: broad peripheral sight for detecting predators and sharp central vision for targeting prey. This dual function would make sense, because in the abyss, missing either a meal or a warning can mean death. It's worth comparing this to human vision. Our eyes are small, adapted for daylight. Even at night, with our pupils dilated, we're blind compared to many animals. Owls, for instance, have large eyes that allow them to see in dim light, perfect for hunting rodents in the dark. But even an owl's eyes pale in comparison to the colossal squid's. To give you perspective, imagine scaling up an owl until it was the size of a squid. Its eyes still wouldn't reach the same diameter. The colossal squid's eyes are not just large, they are proportionally gigantic, far beyond what most animals need. That tells us something important. In the world it lives in, extreme vision is not luxury, but necessity. Another strange detail is the presence of photophores, small light-producing organs found in many squid species. Scientists suspect the colossal squid may have them too, particularly around its eyes. If so, these might serve as counter-illumination, a trick where light organs break up the animal's silhouette, helping it blend into the faint light above. Imagine holding a lantern under your chin to erase your shadow. For the squid, glowing faintly around its eyes could make it harder for predators or prey to detect the round outline of those massive orbs. We don't know for certain if this is true because so few specimens have been studied in good condition, but the idea is tantalizing. It would mean the colossal squid isn't just using its eyes to see, it's using light to hide them. The evolutionary path to such large eyes is still a puzzle. Why did the colossal squid develop them, while many other deep-sea creatures rely on tiny pinprick eyes or even blindness? The answer likely lies in scale. A small squid can get away with stealth, hiding in the dark, eating small prey. But a colossal squid, weighing hundreds of kilograms, needs big meals. It can't survive on plankton or scraps. It has to hunt fish, smaller squid, maybe even sharks, and the only way to find those in the dark is to see what others cannot. Eyes became its greatest tool, refined over millions of years until they reached absurd proportions. Think about what those eyes have seen. For centuries they've watched the black stillness of the Antarctic waters, the flickers of fish darting by, the faint outlines of predators approaching. They've seen battles with whales play out in silence, tentacles lashing, hooks digging, scars forming. They've seen generations of squid rise and vanish without ever being seen by us. And all the while they've remained hidden, a pair of galaxies floating in the dark, staring back at a world that only rarely glimpses them. When researchers examined the colossal squid specimen in 2007, they were stunned by the size of the eyes. Holding them in their hands felt surreal, like cradling a piece of another world. One scientist described them as the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. These were not the eyes of a myth, but of a real creature, preserved in flesh and bone. They had weight, structure, complexity. For a moment, the legends of the Kraken and the Leviathan felt unnecessary. The reality was astonishing enough, and yet, as with everything about this animal, mysteries remain. We still don't know exactly how well it can see. We don't know how far its vision extends, how detailed an image it forms, whether it sees in colour or just shades of light. We don't know if it uses its vision to coordinate with others of its kind, or if it lives in solitary silence. We only know that its eyes are large beyond reason, and that they must matter more than we can yet prove. What's striking is how those eyes capture the imagination. People hear about them and instantly want to know what it would feel like to see through them, to look out at a world where even the faintest flicker becomes a sign of life, to live in a place where sight is rare and where the gift of vision is a matter of survival. It reminds us that our perspective is limited, tied to daylight and surface life. The colossal squid shows us another way of seeing, one tuned to silence, darkness, and danger. Even now, scientists debate whether we fully grasp the purpose of these eyes. Some argue they're primarily for spotting predators, others say they're equally useful for hunting prey. Perhaps they serve both roles seamlessly, switching depending on need. What's certain is that they represent one of evolution's most dramatic experiments. In the absence of light, most creatures give up on sight. The colossal squid doubled down, building eyes so massive they seem almost impossible. That impossibility is part of why this animal still feels like a legend. When you hear about an eye the size of a basketball hidden in the deep sea, it sounds like a sailor's tale, and in a way it is. The colossal squid bridges the gap between myth and reality, turning stories of monsters into biological fact. Its eyes are proof that sometimes the truth is even stranger than the legends. So when you think of the colossal squid, don't just picture arms and hooks and beaks. Picture the gaze of something that sees more than we can imagine, two vast lenses watching the dark with patience and precision. Because in that abyss, where light barely exists, those eyes are not just organs. They are lifelines, shields, weapons, and mysteries rolled into one. And until we truly see through them, they will continue to haunt us as one of nature's most extraordinary achievements. When you try to picture the life of a colossal squid, it's tempting to imagine the animal alone, drifting through endless black water, tentacles trailing, eyes wide open. That image isn't entirely wrong, but it's incomplete, because to truly understand this creature, you have to place it inside its world. And that world is one of the strangest, harshest, and least explored habitats on Earth. The abyss is not simply dark water. It is a realm shaped by crushing pressure, freezing temperatures, scarce food, and ancient survival strategies. It's the kind of place where most animals wouldn't last a second, but for the colossal squid, it's home. The abyss begins where sunlight ends. The ocean is divided into zones, like invisible layers stacked one on top of the other. At the surface lies the epipelagic zone, the sunlit waters where plankton bloom, fish schools shimmer, and coral reefs thrive. Go deeper, and sunlight starts to fade. By about 200 meters down, the world grows dim. At 1,000 meters, the sunlight disappears completely. Below that lies the bathypelagic zone, stretching down to 4,000 meters. And deeper still, the abyssopelagic zone, the midnight plains of the ocean floor. The colossal squid is most often found between about 1,000 and 2,200 meters in the waters surrounding Antarctica and the Southern Ocean. It lives in the twilight and the night, where light is gone and pressure dominates. What does pressure mean at that depth? For every 10 meters you descend, pressure increases by 1 atmosphere. At 1,000 meters, the pressure is about 100 times greater than at the surface. That's like balancing a small car on every square inch of your body. At 2,000 meters, it's double that. No human body could withstand it. Most machines fail too, unless specially designed. And yet the colossal squid moves through it as easily as we walk through air. Its body, lacking bones, doesn't collapse under pressure. Its muscles, organs, and blood are adapted to function in a world where crushing weight is constant. To the squid, pressure isn't a problem. It's simply the baseline of life. The temperature in this realm hovers just above freezing, usually around -1 to 2 degrees Celsius in Antarctic waters. Cold like that slows everything down. Metabolism drags, movement becomes sluggish, growth is slow. The colossal squid may take years, even decades, to reach its full size, feeding occasionally on prey that drifts within reach. In an environment where calories are scarce, the strategy is patience. Waste no energy, strike only when it counts, grow slowly but steadily. That's why these animals reach such massive sizes. Their entire lives are stretched out by the cold, each year adding a little more muscle, a little more bulk. Food is the defining challenge of the abyss. The surface waters are full of life, nourished by sunlight. The deep, by contrast, is a desert. Most of the nutrients sink downward in the form of marine snow, a gentle, endless rain of organic particles, plankton and debris falling from above. It's slow, sparse and unreliable. Larger animals like the colossal squid can't survive on marine snow alone. They need real prey. That means hunting fish, other squid, and perhaps unlucky animals that venture too deep. Some scientists think colossal squid may ambush Patagonian toothfish, a large species common in Antarctic waters. Others suggest they eat chaetonaths, smaller squids, or even deep-sea sharks. But the truth is, no one has ever observed a colossal squid feeding in the wild. Its diet remains a mystery stitched together from fragments and guesses. The abyss isn't empty, though. It's alive with strange creatures, each adapted to darkness in their own way. Lanternfish glow with bioluminescent organs along their sides. Deep-sea shrimp hover in the water column, their bodies translucent. Giant amphipods scuttle across the seafloor. Even at depths of several kilometres, life persists in bizarre forms. Sea cucumbers that sift mud for food, worms that live on bones, jellyfish that drift like ghostly balloons. The colossal squid moves among them, larger than almost anything else, a giant in a kingdom of shadows. Predation defines life in the abyss. Everything is hunting or being hunted, often both. The colossal squid, despite its size and fearsome weapons, is not at the top of the food chain. Its main predator is the sperm whale, a titan in its own right. Sperm whales dive deep, holding their breath for over an hour, navigating with sonar, searching for squid. When they encounter colossal squid, battles break out that leave marks visible on the whale's skin. The squid fights back with hooks and arms, but often it loses. The beaks found in whale stomachs are evidence of countless such encounters. For the colossal squid, survival means evading these predators, relying on its enormous eyes to catch glimpses of danger before it arrives. Still, there's balance here. If sperm whales are the hunters, colossal squids are the prize. The abundance of squid sustains whale populations, and in turn, whale predation prevents squid from overrunning the ecosystem. Each depends on the other in a cycle shaped by millions of years of evolution. To live in the abyss is to accept these relationships, to survive by playing both predator and prey. The environment itself shapes behaviour in ways we can only guess at. For instance, how does a colossal squid find a mate in such vast darkness? Most cephalopods reproduce only once before dying. Males transfer sperm packets to females using a specialised arm, and the female later fertilises her eggs and releases them into the water. For colossal squid, this process must happen in the deep, unseen by us. How do they find each other? Do they use pheromones, trails of scent drifting in the water? Do they flash bioluminescent signals, invisible except to their own kind? No one knows. Every possibility is speculation, each unanswered question a reminder of how much remains hidden. Another unknown is how far they travel. Do colossal squids migrate? following food sources across oceans? Or do they remain relatively localized, content in the Southern Ocean where cold waters suit them? Tagging one would provide answers, but tagging requires catching one alive and releasing it with equipment attached, something never achieved so far. Until then, the squid's movements remain a mystery. It's like trying to map a continent by glimpsing only one mountain peak. Living in the abyss also means existing largely without sound. Unlike whales and dolphins, which use vocalizations and sonar, squids are silent. They communicate, if at all, through subtle means: touch, light, chemical signals. Imagine that. A world where language is absent, replaced by instinct and brief sensory exchanges. The colossal squid doesn't sing or call. It simply moves, hunts, hides, mates, and drifts in silence. In its world, silence is the rule, broken only by the occasional rumble of a distant whale or the faint crackle of ice shifting overhead. Even the seafloor of this world is alien. Below the squid's range lies a plain of fine sediment, shaped by centuries of falling marine snow. Few landmarks exist. No reefs, no forests, just open water above and mud below. For humans, such emptiness feels unsettling. For the colossal squid, it's perfect. No clutter, no obstacles, just space to move and space to disappear. Its anatomy is tuned for this openness, a streamlined body with fins for slow cruising and jet propulsion for quick escapes. In a sense, the abyss is not empty at all. It is exactly what the squid needs it to be. This environment also shields it from us. Our ships, nets, and cameras rarely reach these depths, and when they do, they capture only fragments of its world. The abyss is a fortress built of darkness and pressure, protecting the colossal squid from observation. It doesn't need walls or caves. The conditions themselves are barrier enough, and maybe that's why it has remained such a mystery. It lives in a place designed to repel intruders, a place where even our best technology struggles. To live in the abyss is to live at the edge of what's possible. For most creatures it's too cold, too dark, too empty. For the colossal squid, it's perfect. Its body is adapted to it in every way, from the copper in its blood to the size of its eyes. The abyss is not its prison, it's its kingdom. And while we struggle to imagine what life is like there, for the squid it's simply existence, an existence as natural to it as air and sunlight are to us. Thinking about this world also reminds us how little of it we've seen. We've mapped the surface of Mars more thoroughly than the deep sea. The abyss holds more unknown species than known ones, more questions than answers. And somewhere in that silence, colossal squids are living right now, unseen, waiting, surviving in ways we can barely guess. That's the essence of its mystery. It's not just the squid itself, but the world it inhabits. A world that remains hidden even as we tell stories about it. And as we continue on this journey, it becomes clear that to know the colossal squid is also to know the abyss. You can't separate the animal from its environment. It's not just a giant in the dark. It's a creature born of that darkness, shaped by it, defined by it, and inseparable from it. When you picture the colossal squid, it's impossible not to imagine what happens when it meets the only predator big and determined enough to hunt it, the sperm whale. These two giants of the abyss represent one of the most dramatic predator-prey relationships on Earth, and yet almost everything we know about it comes not from direct observation, but from scars, stomach contents, and speculation. It's a silent war waged in the dark, battles fought hundreds of meters below the surface, far from human eyes, and still the evidence is written clearly on the bodies that make it back to us. The sperm whale is itself a remarkable animal, the largest of the toothed whales, capable of reaching lengths of 20 meters and weighing up to 50 tons. Its head alone can be a third of its body length, packed with sonar equipment so sophisticated it can navigate and hunt in total darkness. These whales dive deeper than almost any other mammal, regularly reaching depths of 1,000 meters and sometimes descending past 2,000. Down there, where light doesn't exist, they use echolocation, clicking sounds that travel through water, bouncing off objects, returning echoes that paint a picture of what lies ahead. It's sonar precise enough to detect the outline of a fish in pitch black water, powerful enough to locate a squid hiding silently in the abyss. When a whale finds a colossal squid, the hunt begins. The whale has size, power, and sonar on its side. The squid has speed, hooks, a beak, and those enormous eyes. Imagine the encounter. The whale approaching, invisible to sight but betrayed by the disturbance of bioluminescent plankton. The squid, recognizing the threat, tries to evade, jetting away, arms trailing. But a whale can move faster than you'd think, propelling its massive body with strokes of its tail. The whale closes in, its jaws opening, teeth ready to seize the squid. That's when the squid fights back. It lashes with its tentacles, hooks scraping, suckers gripping onto the whale's skin. The whale might carry away the squid in its mouth, but not without scars. Those scars are some of the best evidence we have of these encounters. Many sperm whales studied by researchers show long circular sucker marks etched across their heads and jaws, some as wide as a coffee mug. Others carry deep gashes, likely from the squid's rotating hooks. These are not accidental scrapes. They are battle wounds, proof that the prey doesn't go quietly. The squid's beak is another piece of evidence. When whales are caught or stranded and their stomachs examined, scientists often find dozens or even hundreds of squid beaks inside. Most belong to smaller squid species, but among them are colossal squid beaks, large enough to confirm the whale had fought and eaten one. The beaks, indigestible and durable, remain long after the flesh is gone, like bones in a campfire, silent testimony to meals swallowed in the deep. What's remarkable is how these battles shape both animals. For the sperm whale, the colossal squid is not just prey, it's a challenge. Diving deep into freezing waters, holding its breath for an hour or more, expending enormous energy to chase down an animal that doesn't want to be caught. For the squid, survival means evolving defences strong enough to at least make the hunt costly. Hooks, enormous eyes, a muscular body. It's all part of the arms race between predator and prey. Scientists debate how often these encounters happen. Are colossal squid a regular part of the whale's diet? Or are they rare, special catches in a menu mostly made of smaller squid? Evidence suggests both. Some whale populations in Antarctic waters seem to consume colossal squid frequently, while others rely on smaller, more abundant species. What's certain is that the two species are locked in an evolutionary relationship. The whale's ability to dive and hunt in darkness has been honed over millions of years, just as the squid's size and vision have. Neither evolved in isolation. They evolved because of each other, and that's the fascinating part. The colossal squid may owe much of its anatomy to the pressure of surviving these battles. Its eyes, massive and sensitive, detect the approach of whales. Its hooks and beak make it dangerous enough that whales bear the scars. Even its size might be in part a defense mechanism. Being larger means being harder to swallow, harder to subdue. In biology, size often functions as both offense and defense, and here it likely serves both roles. What happens during the actual fight is still mostly imagination. No one has filmed a colossal squid and a sperm whale in combat. The depths are too dark, the encounters too rare, and the technology too limited. Instead, we piece it together like detectives from the clues left behind. The scars suggest prolonged struggles, not quick kills. The number of beaks in whale stomachs suggests persistence. The whales succeed often enough to keep trying, and the size of some squid beaks suggests that whales sometimes tackle squid as heavy as half a ton. Imagine that. A predator the size of a bus fighting a prey the size of a car, in total darkness, with no sound except the faint clicks of sonar and the rush of water. To humans, these battles are myth brought to life. For centuries, sailors told stories of whales and sea monsters locked in combat, waves thrashing, tentacles flailing. Those tales seemed like exaggerations, but the evidence proves they weren't entirely wrong. The fights do happen. They just take place out of sight, leaving behind scars and stories carried up to the surface. What's sobering is that in this war, the squid almost always loses. Sperm whales are too big, too skilled, too relentless. Yet the squid's resistance is still crucial. It ensures the balance of power remains dynamic. The whale has to earn its meal, dive deep, risk injury, spend energy. The squid, even in defeat, forces respect. And in rare cases, perhaps, a whale does lose, a giant squid escaping its grasp, hooks tearing, beak snapping, leaving the predator empty-mouthed in the dark. Those moments are invisible to us, but they must happen, otherwise the squid wouldn't exist at all. From a scientific point of view, these battles reveal the hidden drama of the deep sea. We often think of the abyss as silent, empty, static. But here is proof of dynamic struggle, of predator and prey locked in contests as fierce as any lion chasing a zebra or wolf hunting elk. It's just that these contests happen in silence, in crushing cold, where human eyes cannot follow. The ocean hides its greatest spectacles from us, and maybe that's why they fascinate us so much. There's also something humbling in realizing that the largest predator-prey battle on Earth takes place where we cannot see it. On land, the biggest predator-prey interactions involve maybe lions and buffalo, or polar bears and seals. Impressive, yes, but small compared to the scale of the abyss. Here, the players are tens of meters long, weighing tons, carrying weapons shaped by millions of years of adaptation. Their clashes are silent epics, invisible wars that shape ecosystems we barely understand. The whale-squid relationship also raises questions we haven't answered. How many colossal squid does a single whale consume in a lifetime? Do whales prefer younger, smaller squid, or do they deliberately seek the largest individuals? Do squid change their behaviour in areas with many whales, becoming more cautious, or do they remain solitary and vulnerable? Every answer would tell us not only about the squid, but about the health of the Antarctic ecosystem. Because if whales rely heavily on these squid, then protecting the squid is essential to protecting the whales. The two species are intertwined, their fates linked beneath the ice. And yet, even as we learn more, the mystery persists. No camera has recorded the fight. No submarine has witnessed it directly. All we have are scars, beaks, and imagination. And maybe that's enough. Maybe part of the allure is knowing that the ocean still holds secrets too large for us to capture, too wild for us to domesticate. Somewhere right now, in the freezing dark waters of the Southern Ocean, a sperm whale is diving, sonar clicking, searching for a shadow in the gloom. Somewhere down there, a colossal squid is waiting, eyes wide, hooks ready, preparing for a battle that will leave one scarred and the other consumed. We may never see it with our own eyes, but the evidence tells the story clearly enough. The battles in the deep are real, and they are among the most extraordinary natural encounters on Earth. When you try to piece together the life of an animal that refuses to be seen alive in its own world, you take whatever evidence you can get. For the colossal squid, that evidence often comes in the most unexpected place, the stomachs of its predators. And from all the fragments and mysteries, one detail stands out again and again: the beak. Unlike most of the squid's body, the beak does not decay easily. The mantle, the arms, the fins, all of those are soft tissue, fragile in the face of digestion. They disappear quickly once swallowed by a predator, but the beak, made of chitin, is different. Chitin is tough, lightweight, resistant to the acids of a stomach. It endures long after everything else is broken down. In this way, the beak becomes the calling card of the colossal squid. Whenever a sperm whale consumes one, the whale's stomach holds the proof, a sharp, curved relic of a battle fought in the deep. The beak looks unsettlingly bird-like. Its curved, parrot-like upper half and pointed lower half fit together perfectly. forming a cutting edge strong enough to slice through thick flesh. Even stripped from the squid's body, it radiates menace. Hold one in your hand and you can imagine how much force it must exert when backed by a half-ton of muscle. It's not surprising that whalers and scientists alike have often focused on these beaks. They are not only evidence that colossal squids exist, but also clues to their size, their diet, and their role in the ecosystem. Sperm whales are the main source of this evidence. When scientists examine whale stomachs, either from stranded individuals or from historic whaling records, they often find dozens, sometimes hundreds, of squid beaks. Most are small, belonging to ordinary squid species, but occasionally among them lies a giant, thicker, sharper, unmistakably from a colossal squid. Measuring these beaks allows researchers to estimate the size of the squid that produced them. The relationship between beak size and body size isn't exact, but it's reliable enough to give a sense of scale. And some of the largest beaks ever found suggest colossal squids bigger than any specimen we've physically captured. That alone is astonishing. Imagine what this means. Even though the largest colossal squid ever hauled up by a fishing vessel weighed close to 500 kilograms, the beaks in whale stomachs hint at individuals that may weigh 600, even 700 kilograms or more. In other words, the biggest squid alive today might be far larger than anything we've laid eyes on. The beak becomes not just a relic, but a window into possibilities. The beaks also tell us about diet. Inside squid beaks, faint traces of prey DNA sometimes linger, revealing what the squid itself was eating before becoming prey. These studies are still rare, but they hint at a diet consisting of large fish like the Antarctic toothfish, as well as smaller squids. This creates a fascinating food chain. The colossal squid preys on large fish, and in turn, sperm whales prey on the squid. The evidence for all of it passes through the beak, like a message carved into bone. There's also the question of how whales deal with the indigestible beaks. Some beaks remain in the stomach indefinitely, slowly accumulating while others are regurgitated. In fact, the giant masses of ambergris found occasionally on beaches, waxy lumps prized historically for use in perfumes, are thought to form partly as a byproduct of squid beaks irritating a whale's intestines. In this way, the colossal squid's beak influences not only the whale that eats it, but also human industries that once relied on ambergris. A chain of cause and effect stretching from the abyss to the surface, from a squid's anatomy to a bottle of perfume in a shop window. When you think about it, it's remarkable how much of what we know about the colossal squid comes from indirect evidence like this. We haven't filmed one hunting, but we know it hunts because of the fish remains associated with its beaks. We haven't measured the largest individuals, but we know they exist because of the size of the beaks found in whales. We haven't observed its reproductive behaviour, but the distribution of beaks tells us where populations might be concentrated. The beak is more than a piece of anatomy. It's the keyhole through which we glimpse the whole animal. Scientific study of these beaks has developed into an art of its own. Researchers compare beak shapes, sizes, and wear patterns, cataloguing them in collections that function almost like fingerprint databases. Each species of squid has a slightly different beak design, adapted to the size and type of prey it eats. The colossal squid's beak is distinctive, larger and more robust than most. When a new beak is recovered from a whale, it can be slotted into this library of knowledge, expanding our picture of the species little by little. But there's also something strangely poetic about this. Think about it. A whale swallows a colossal squid in the freezing dark. The squid fights back, leaving scars on the whale's skin, but eventually it's consumed. The whale swims on, carrying the beak in its stomach. Days, weeks, months later, the whale dies, or washes ashore, or is dissected by scientists. And only then, perhaps years after the battle, the beak is recovered, studied, measured, written about. The story of that single squid, that single encounter, is carried forward by a fragment of indigestible chitin. Without it, we might never know the squid had lived at all. Of course, the beak isn't the only clue. Sometimes scientists find other remains in whale stomachs. Pieces of tentacle, sucker rings, or fragments of muscle. But the beak is the most consistent, the most durable. It's the through line in a story otherwise full of gaps. And in many ways, it's fitting that such a mysterious creature should be known through a single hard fragment. The colossal squid itself slips away into darkness, but its beak insists on being found, as if to remind us that the abyss does not give up all its secrets so easily. This reliance on indirect evidence shapes the way we think about the species. Unlike most animals we study, we don't get to observe behaviour directly. Instead, we reconstruct it like archaeologists, piecing together lives from fragments. Every beak becomes a data point, every stomach survey a record of battles fought in the dark. Together they form a picture that's both tantalising and incomplete. It's like having the scattered bones of a dinosaur but no living animal to observe. The imagination fills in the gaps, guided by what little the evidence tells us. For some scientists, this process is both frustrating and exhilarating. Frustrating because the absence of live observation leaves so many questions unanswered. Exhilarating because it means the ocean still holds real mystery. In a world where so many species are catalogued, filmed and understood, the colossal squid remains partly unknowable, and its beak, humble and sharp, is the one thing that refuses to let the mystery vanish. The beak also carries symbolic weight beyond science. For centuries, stories of sea monsters seemed too fantastical to be true, and yet here is physical proof, small enough to fit in your hand, hard enough to outlast digestion, undeniable in its reality. Holding a colossal squid beak is holding the line between myth and truth. It's evidence that the monster exists, that it isn't just a sailor's exaggeration, it's real, and it's out there still. In some ways, the beak is the ultimate reminder of how much we don't know. For every specimen found, how many squids live and die without ever leaving evidence? For every beak recovered from a whale stomach, how many others are dissolved, lost, or regurgitated into the sea, never to be seen? The numbers must be staggering, yet we only glimpse a fraction. It's humbling to realise that our entire understanding of one of the largest animals on Earth depends so heavily on chance encounters and the contents of another animal's stomach. And yet, that's the nature of deep-sea science. You take what the ocean offers, piece it together and remain patient. The colossal squid's beak may seem like a small fragment, but it speaks volumes. It tells us the squid is real, it tells us how big it might be, it tells us what it eats, and it tells us who eats it. It carries the echoes of battles fought miles below the surface, in a darkness we cannot enter. So when you hear about the colossal squid, don't just think of tentacles and eyes. Think of the beak, sharp and indigestible, carried upward from the abyss by a whale, waiting to be discovered. Because in that beak lies the story of the phantom ruler of the deep, a story we're still only beginning to read. For most large animals on Earth, once scientists decide to study them, they find a way. Elephants can be tracked across savannas, lions observed in prides, whales followed with drones and acoustic tags. But the colossal squid continues to resist. Even now, with submersibles diving deeper than ever before and satellites mapping the surface of the seas in fine detail, this enormous creature remains almost entirely hidden. It's not because we haven't tried. It's because the challenges of finding and studying it are so immense that progress comes only in fragments. That's why, despite knowing it exists, the colossal squid still feels more like a ghost than a neighbour. The first challenge is geography. The colossal squid doesn't live just anywhere. Its range is centred in the Southern Ocean, especially around Antarctica. These waters are some of the most remote and inhospitable on the planet. Even reaching them requires specialised ships built to handle ice, storms and cold. Researchers travelling there face weeks at sea, unpredictable weather and constant risks. Most marine expeditions avoid the Antarctic unless they're specifically designed for it, and even then, The focus is often on more accessible species like krill, fish, or penguins. Squids that live thousands of meters down aren't exactly easy to prioritize, especially when funding is scarce. Then there's the matter of depth. The colossal squid lives in the Bath hypelagic zone, usually between 1,000 and 2,200 meters below the surface. That's well beyond the reach of scuba divers and beyond the comfort zone of most submersibles. Even the best deep-sea cameras have trouble operating consistently at those depths. Pressure there can crush equipment, while cold slows or damages delicate electronics. Deploying a camera means not only lowering it for hours or days, but also retrieving it intact through unpredictable waters. Every attempt carries the risk of failure, and even success often yields little more than footage of empty blackness. Another problem is behaviour. Colossal squids are not drawn to bait the way sharks are. They're not surface feeders like whales. They're deep ambush predators, built for silence and patience. That makes them extremely difficult to attract or locate. Even when researchers use long lines or trawls in squid territory, they almost never catch one alive. The few specimens recovered have been accidental, caught by fishermen targeting other species. This lack of predictability means scientists can't design reliable studies. You can plan for whales because you know roughly when and where they'll surface. You can't plan for colossal squid because they don't give us any rhythm to follow. There's also the problem of fragility. Unlike whales, which can survive being tagged and followed for months, squids don't handle human interference well. Their bodies are soft, without bones to protect them. Hauling one to the surface usually kills it, the sudden change in pressure and temperature overwhelming its system. That means we can't simply capture one, attach a tracker, and release it. Every attempt at direct contact risks destroying the very animal we're trying to learn about. Even when we do get specimens, they come with limitations. Most are incomplete, damaged by nets, or partially digested by whales. The few whole individuals we've studied, like the famous specimen preserved in New Zealand, represent only a tiny sample. They might not even be average. For all we know, they could be unusually small or unusually large, young or old, healthy or unhealthy. Without a larger sample size, it's impossible to generalize about the species. Imagine trying to understand lions by studying only 2 carcasses. You'd get some idea, but you'd miss the complexity of their behaviour, their family structures, their interactions with the environment. That's the problem with colossal squid research. Technology is slowly improving, but progress is slow. Remotely operated vehicles and deep-sea cameras have given us glimpses of giant squid in recent years, but the colossal squid remains absent. Part of the reason may be its habitat. Unlike giant squid, which inhabit temperate waters around the world, colossal squid stick to the frigid Southern Ocean. Few ROV expeditions venture there, and fewer still are designed for squid hunting. The Southern Ocean is vast, hostile, and expensive to study. Until more resources are devoted to it, our chances of capturing the squid on film remain slim. There's also the challenge of scale. The ocean is unimaginably large. Even if you know colossal squid live between 1,000 and 2,000 meters deep around Antarctica, that's still millions of square kilometers of habitat. Dropping a camera into that space is like lowering a single flashlight into a stadium and hoping it happens to land right next to the person you're looking for. The odds are astronomically low. That's why so much of what we know comes indirectly, from whale stomachs, from scars, from fragments in nets. It's not that we don't want to study them directly, it's that the logistics make it almost impossible. Another factor is time. Colossal squids live in an environment with slow metabolism, long growth cycles, and perhaps long lifespans. That means encounters may be rare not only because of geography and depth, but because the animals themselves aren't abundant at the surface, or even in mid-water. They might spend days or weeks motionless, conserving energy, waiting to ambush prey. If that's the case, then stumbling across one in action would be like trying to spot a leopard sitting silently in a jungle the size of a continent. Possible, but unlikely without extraordinary luck. And luck has played a role. The specimens we have came from fishing vessels by chance. Nets hauled for toothfish or other species happened to snag colossal squids as bycatch. That's how we ended up with the near-complete specimen in 2007. But relying on luck isn't a strategy, it's an accident, and accidents don't build comprehensive knowledge. Until we have a way to consistently observe these animals, they will remain more phantom than fact. Even public interest poses a challenge. For decades, funding for deep-sea research has been limited. Governments and institutions often prefer projects with immediate benefits: fisheries management, climate studies, or medical research. The colossal squid, while fascinating, doesn't promise direct financial return. It's a creature of curiosity rather than commerce, and curiosity alone is often not enough to justify the immense cost of Antarctic expeditions. That leaves scientists relying on rare grants, collaborations, and sometimes piggybacking on fisheries to gather data. Every bit of progress feels like a victory against long odds. This explains why so many questions remain unanswered. How do colossal squids reproduce? How long do they live? How many exist? What's their full range? We don't know. We have guesses, but little more. Even the largest estimates of their size come not from direct measurement, but from extrapolating beak dimensions. It's like trying to guess the height of a person from the size of their teeth. You can get close, but you're always left wondering. Yet in some ways, this difficulty is part of the fascination. If we knew everything about the colossal squid, it might lose some of its aura. Part of what makes it compelling is that it resists our gaze. It lives in a fortress of darkness and pressure, beyond our easy reach. It's a reminder that even in an age of satellites and genetic sequencing, Earth still has mysteries that elude us. The colossal squid is a living symbol of that truth, but that doesn't mean we stop trying. Every new piece of evidence brings us closer. A new beak found in a whale's stomach, a new specimen hauled up, a new camera deployed. Each one adds to the puzzle. Maybe one day technology will catch up. Maybe an ROV will descend into Antarctic waters and catch a colossal squid on film, alive, hunting, moving through its world with ease. Until then, the challenges remain, and the animal remains phantom. And perhaps that's fitting. Perhaps the colossal squid needs its mystery. Perhaps if it were common, if we could watch it on documentaries every week, it wouldn't feel quite so special. The challenge of studying it ensures that it remains something more than just another species in a database. It remains legend made flesh, a shadow we can never fully grasp. For as long as humans have been venturing into the sea, strange things have been washing ashore. Pieces of unidentifiable flesh, tentacles longer than a man's body, fragments that looked nothing like familiar fish or whales. These discoveries became the raw material for myths and legends, but they also laid the groundwork for science. The story of the colossal squid isn't just about the animal itself, it's also about how we came to know it, slowly, in fragments, through accidents and chance encounters. Its history is scattered across beaches, fishing nets, and the stomachs of whales, each piece building toward a picture that is still incomplete. The earliest reliable discoveries go back centuries, though they were often misinterpreted. In the 1600s and 1700s, large squid carcasses were occasionally reported on coasts in Europe and North America. Most were badly decomposed, little more than rubbery masses of tissue, but they were strange enough to draw attention. Naturalists of the time, working with limited tools, speculated about giant sea serpents, monstrous fish, or entirely new classes of animals. Drawings from these reports show tentacles exaggerated to impossible lengths, bodies swollen and distorted. Yet if you look closely, you can see the outlines of what we now recognise as giant or colossal squid. By the 19th century, as natural history became more systematic, these discoveries began to be catalogued more carefully. In 1857, Danish naturalist Peter Steenstrup examined squid beaks found in the stomachs of sperm whales and described the species we now call Architeuthis, the giant squid. This was the first time the creature had been given a formal scientific name. But even as the giant squid entered the textbooks, whispers of an even larger, stockier relative began to circulate. Sailors in the Southern Ocean spoke of strange, heavier squid, and fragments washed up in Antarctic waters hinted at something distinct. The colossal squid itself was first described in 1925, not from a whole animal, but from tentacle fragments retrieved from a sperm whale's stomach. Scottish zoologist Guy Coburn Robson examined these pieces and realised they didn't belong to Architeuthis. The hooks, the thickness of the tentacle, the proportions all suggested something different, something bigger. He gave it a name, Mesonychoteuthis hamiltoni. That moment marked the official recognition of the colossal squid, though at the time, almost nothing was known beyond those fragments. For decades afterward, sightings remained scarce. Most evidence came second-hand, through whales. Scientists would study the stomach contents of whales killed in commercial hunts, pulling out beaks and occasionally bits of tentacle. Each piece confirmed the squid's existence, but nothing more. It was like trying to understand a novel by reading only a handful of sentences torn from the middle. We knew the animal was there, but not what it looked like alive, how it behaved, or how large it could truly become. That began to change slowly in the latter half of the 20th century, as more fishing vessels ventured into Antarctic waters. Longline fisheries targeting Patagonian toothfish and Antarctic toothfish sometimes snagged colossal squid as bycatch. These accidental captures were often juveniles or smaller adults, but they provided more complete specimens than we'd ever seen before. Suddenly, instead of fragments, scientists could study mantles, fins, and arms. Even so, the picture was still frustratingly incomplete. The breakthrough moment came in 2003, when a New Zealand longline fishing vessel operating in the Ross Sea hauled up the first subadult colossal squid ever captured intact. At about 2.5 metres long, it wasn't anywhere near full size, but it was enough to electrify researchers. Here, finally, was proof that the colossal squid wasn't just fragments and legend. It was flesh and blood, solid enough to measure, examine and display. Photos of the specimen spread quickly, sparking public fascination. People around the world, many hearing of the colossal squid for the first time, were astonished that such a creature still lived on Earth, undiscovered in its natural state. But that was only the beginning. In 2007, another fishing vessel in the Ross Sea caught something extraordinary. A nearly full-grown colossal squid, weighing close to half a ton and measuring over 4 metres in mantle length, with tentacles stretching even farther. The squid was alive when brought to the surface, but died shortly afterward, unable to survive the change in pressure. Recognising its importance, the crew preserved it in freezing conditions and brought it back to New Zealand. When scientists unveiled it, the world finally saw a colossal squid in full. That specimen was dissected and studied extensively. Its hooks, beak, eyes and mantle all confirmed what had only been theorised. It was stockier than the giant squid, far heavier, with adaptation suggesting a more powerful predator. The eyes were astonishingly large, the beak formidable. Researchers placed it in a giant tank of formalin, later transferring it to an enormous container of preservative liquid for display at the Museum of New Zealand Te Papa Tongarewa. For the first time, the public could stand in front of a colossal squid, not as a myth, not as a sketch, but as a preserved body. Even with this milestone, many questions lingered. The preserved squid gave us a look at anatomy, but not behaviour. It told us how it was built, but not how it lived. Without footage of a living colossal squid in its natural environment, the mystery remained intact. Still, the 2007 specimen transformed our understanding. It showed that colossal squids were not rare aberrations, but real, thriving members of the Antarctic ecosystem, and it reminded us how much of the ocean still resists our efforts to know it. Meanwhile, technology was catching up. In 2004, a Japanese team led by Tsunemi Kubodera managed to photograph a live giant squid in the wild for the first time. The images, captured in waters off Japan, showed the animal's arms and body wrapping around baited lines. 2 years later, in 2006, the same team filmed one alive, struggling in the water as it was brought to the surface. These were giant squids, not colossal squids, but the breakthrough proved that with patience and technology, it was possible to capture images of these elusive creatures in their world. The hope is that one day the same will happen with Mesonychoteuthis, that cameras deployed in Antarctic waters will capture a colossal squid alive, swimming freely, eyes glowing like pale lanterns in the dark. But so far, the footage eludes us. Every attempt has come up empty. We've seen giant squid alive, but the colossal squid remains a ghost. It's a strange irony. We know more about its larger cousin thanks to lucky footage than we do about the squid that's actually bulkier and, in many ways, more fearsome. Still, each discovery has added a chapter to the story, from fragments in whale stomachs to beached carcasses, from the 1925 description to the 2003 juvenile and the 2007 adult. The history of colossal squid discoveries is a testament to persistence. It shows how science often advances not in leaps, but in small steps, each piece of evidence building on the last. And it shows how much of our relationship with this animal has been shaped by chance. A whale dives and swallows a squid, leaving behind a beak. A storm washes a carcass ashore. A fishing line snags something unexpected. These accidents become milestones in the scientific record, and perhaps that's the most striking part of this history. We didn't set out to find the colossal squid. It found us, in fragments and flashes, in places where we least expected it. Our knowledge has grown not because we conquered the abyss, but because the abyss allowed us rare glimpses. That's why the colossal squid still feels like a phantom. Even after a century of discoveries, we have more questions than answers, more imagination than certainty. But the story isn't over. Technology keeps advancing. Submersibles dive deeper, cameras grow more sensitive, and every year brings new expeditions to the Antarctic. It's only a matter of time before the next discovery. Maybe another specimen hauled up by chance. Maybe a glimpse caught on film. Maybe something entirely unexpected. That's the nature of studying the deep sea. Every new piece is a surprise, and every surprise rewrites what we thought we knew. So when we look back at the history of the colossal squid, from myths of sea monsters to preserved specimens in museums, we see more than just an animal. We see the slow unfolding of a mystery, the patient accumulation of evidence, and the reminder that even today, the ocean still holds wonders beyond our reach. And somewhere down there, right now, the next discovery is waiting. When we talk about the colossal squid, we can't separate the animal from the world it inhabits. Its entire existence is shaped by darkness. In the ocean, light fades quickly. By 200 meters, sunlight is dim and blue. By 1,000 meters, it's gone altogether. The colossal squid lives far below this boundary, in a zone where sunlight never reaches, where the only illumination comes from the faint sparks of bioluminescence produced by other animals. To live in this realm is to accept darkness not as an obstacle, but as the defining condition of life. Darkness changes everything. For the colossal squid, it dictates how it hunts, how it avoids predators, how it perceives the world. It means relying on senses other than sight, while still carrying the largest eyes in the animal kingdom to amplify whatever tiny traces of light are available. Those eyes, enormous and pale, are built to capture flickers that other animals would miss. The faint trail of disturbed plankton as a sperm whale passes, the shimmer of a fish darting nearby, the glow of a small squid revealing its position. In the dark, vision becomes less about detail and more about pattern, contrast and movement. The colossal squid doesn't need to see a clear picture of its prey, it only needs to see enough to strike. But darkness also slows life down. Without sunlight, there is no photosynthesis. No abundant plankton bloom to feed a cascade of species. The food that does exist is scarce, falling from above as marine snow or swimming into the zone as fish and other squid. For the colossal squid, this means energy must be conserved. It cannot afford to chase prey endlessly. Its heavy body, thick mantle, and stocky proportions suggest an ambush strategy rather than high-speed pursuit. In the deep dark, patience becomes the most valuable adaptation. A squid that wastes energy will starve. A squid that waits, silent and still, has a better chance of surviving. Darkness also hides. It allows the colossal squid to disappear into the void, its pale body vanishing against the black water. Predators like sperm whales must rely on sonar, not sight, to detect it. But the squid doesn't leave everything to chance. Some scientists believe it may use bioluminescence of its own, faint glows from organs near its eyes or body, to disguise its silhouette. By glowing just enough to match the faint light above, it could erase its outline and become invisible to anything looking upward. In a world where every scrap of light matters, camouflage isn't just about colour, it's about manipulating the darkness itself. Another way darkness shapes behaviour is in communication, or perhaps the lack of it. Many shallow water squid and octopuses use colour changes to signal each other, flashing patterns across their skin using chromatophores. But at 1,000 metres down, those colours are useless. The colossal squid may not use visual displays at all. If it communicates, it likely does so through touch, chemical signals, or subtle bioluminescent flashes invisible to most eyes. This makes its social life, if it has one, almost entirely a mystery. Does it live alone, meeting others only briefly to mate? Or does it cross paths more often, perhaps recognizing rivals or potential partners through faint glows or chemical trails in the water? Without light, those interactions must be fundamentally different from anything we can easily imagine. The darkness also shapes reproduction. Finding a mate in a world this vast and empty is difficult. For many deep-sea species, the solution is opportunism. Some anglerfish, for example, have males that fuse to females permanently, becoming little more than sperm-producing appendages. Squid don't go that far, but their reproductive strategies are often unusual. Males may deposit packets of sperm onto the female's body, where she later uses them to fertilize eggs. In the colossal squid, this probably happens in the dark with little ceremony, perhaps guided by chemical signals or faint visual cues. The behaviour is hidden from us, but the darkness ensures it is brief, efficient, and almost entirely private. Darkness even affects how the colossal squid grows. In the cold, lightless waters, metabolism is slow, energy is scarce, growth takes years, perhaps decades. Each meal adds a little more to the mantle, a little more weight to the body. Over time, the squid becomes enormous, but the process is stretched out by the slow pace of the abyss. Unlike surface animals that grow quickly in food-rich environments, the colossal squid embodies patience. Darkness enforces that patience, slowing everything to a crawl. When we think of the abyss as empty, we imagine loneliness. But for the squid, the darkness is crowded in its own way. Lanternfish glow along their sides as they rise and fall in daily migrations. Shrimp pulse with faint sparks when disturbed. Jellyfish drift like dim bulbs. The darkness is alive with tiny points of light, like stars scattered in a night sky. For the colossal squid, these lights may be both opportunity and danger. A flash of light could mean prey to seize, or it could mean the approach of something larger. The squid's eyes interpret these signals with care, translating a galaxy of flickers into decisions about when to strike and when to hide. Darkness also dictates how the squid defends itself. When attacked, a shallow water squid releases ink, creating a dark cloud to escape into. But at 1,000 meters down, where everything is already black, ink would be useless. That adaptation is irrelevant in the abyss. The colossal squid instead relies on its size, its hooks, and its ability to detect predators before they arrive. The darkness forces it to evolve defenses suited not to hiding behind ink but to surviving direct confrontation. And in those confrontations, darkness is an advantage as much as a threat. A sperm whale may have sonar, but the squid has the element of surprise. Hidden in the dark, motionless, it might evade detection long enough to slip away. Even in defeat, the squid's hooks leave marks, reminders that the battle wasn't one-sided. The whale swims away scarred, the squid consumed, but the struggle is shaped entirely by the environment. Without darkness, the squid would have no chance at all. With it, survival becomes possible. It's also worth remembering that darkness doesn't mean silence. At these depths, sound travels far. The clicks of sperm whales, the low rumbles of ice shifting above, the faint crackle of crustaceans. These are part of the squid's world. But how much it perceives them and how it responds remains uncertain. Does it detect vibrations in the water through its arms? Does it sense pressure changes from the movement of distant predators? We don't know, but in the dark every clue matters, and every adaptation must be tuned to notice what little can be noticed. The role of darkness in shaping the colossal squid goes beyond survival. It also shapes how we perceive it. The fact that it lives in a place we cannot see makes it mysterious. If colossal squids lived near the surface, we would have filmed them long ago. We would know their habits, their behaviour, their life cycle. Instead, they remain hidden, and that hiddenness makes them legendary. The darkness protects them from us as much as from predators. It ensures that even in the 21st century they remain partly unknowable. In a way, the colossal squid is a perfect expression of its environment. Its eyes are shaped by darkness, its patience is enforced by scarcity, its defences are honed by predators that hunt in the dark. Its very identity is inseparable from the abyss. Remove it from that world and it dies quickly, unable to cope with pressure and light. It cannot live in our realm, just as we cannot live in its. The boundary between light and dark is also the boundary between us and them. And maybe that's why the colossal squid fascinates us so much. It represents not just an animal, but a way of life completely alien to ours. A life defined by silence, pressure, cold, and above all, darkness. When we think of it, we're not just imagining a squid. We're imagining an entire world we cannot visit. A world where light is rare and survival is slow and patient. The squid is both a creature and a symbol, reminding us that Earth still holds places as strange and inaccessible as any alien planet. So when we picture the colossal squid drifting in the abyss, we have to remember that it isn't just adapted to darkness. It is made by it. Its body, its senses, its strategies, all are answers to the question of how to live without light. And until we can follow it into that dark world, it will remain what it has always been. A phantom, perfectly at home in a realm we can only imagine. When people first hear about colossal squids, one of the most common questions is how they differ from giant squids. The names themselves invite confusion. Both are massive, both live in the deep ocean, both are elusive and mysterious. But while they share some similarities, they are distinct animals, adapted to different lives in different environments. To compare them is to place two of nature's most remarkable giants side by side, and realise that the ocean is big enough to create not just one, but two legendary predators. The giant squid, Architeuthis dux, has long been the poster child for sea monster stories. For centuries, it was the creature sailors most often glimpsed, the one that washed ashore in dramatic fashion, the one that inspired tales of krakens pulling ships beneath the waves. It is long, slender, with a mantle that can stretch up to 2.5 meters and tentacles that may reach more than 10. In total length, a giant squid can rival a bus, stretching across the deck of a ship if laid out in full. Its body is built for length rather than bulk, giving it a serpentine appearance in the water. The colossal squid, Mesonicoteuthis hamiltoni, is stockier, heavier, with a shorter mantle, but far more mass. While the giant squid might be longer overall, the colossal squid outweighs it significantly. The largest giant squids are estimated at a few hundred kilograms. The largest colossal squids are thought to reach 600 or even 700 kilograms, with bodies thick and muscular, shaped less like a ribbon and more like a tank. It's the difference between a marathon runner and a powerlifter. One is built for speed and reach, the other for strength and impact. Their habitats overlap only slightly. Giant squids live in deep, temperate and tropical waters across the globe, from the North Atlantic to the Pacific. Colossal squids, on the other hand, are confined largely to the Southern Ocean circling Antarctica. The cold, nutrient-rich waters of that region support large populations of prey species like toothfish, which in turn sustain the squid. This geographic separation explains why we sometimes hear more about giant squids. They live closer to coasts where people travel, and their carcasses wash ashore more frequently. Colossal squids, in contrast, live in waters few humans ever visit. Anatomically, the differences are striking. The giant squid's tentacles end in suckers lined with serrated rings, used to grip prey tightly. The colossal squid's tentacles, however, bear swiveling hooks as well as suckers. Some of these hooks rotate, embedding themselves more firmly in flesh. Others are fixed, acting like natural blades. This gives the colossal squid a more formidable weapon set, designed to not only hold prey but injure it immediately. A fish caught by a giant squid might struggle, twisting against suction. A fish caught by a colossal squid is likely hooked, cut and dragged in quickly. Their eyes are another point of difference. Both species have enormous eyes, among the largest of any animals, but the colossal squids are larger still, reaching up to 30 centimeters across. Giant squid eyes are enormous by human standards, but not as extreme. This suggests a difference in predator pressure. The giant squid is hunted by sperm whales, yes, but perhaps less frequently or in different conditions. The colossal squid, living in the Southern Ocean, faces relentless pursuit by sperm whales diving in icy darkness. Its gigantic eyes may have evolved specifically to detect those predators in conditions where survival depends on a few seconds' warning. Behaviourally, the two species may diverge as well, though here the evidence is thin. Giant squids, based on footage captured off Japan and elsewhere, appear to be active hunters. They pursue prey in the mid-water column, lashing out with long tentacles, reeling it in toward their beak. Colossal squids, by contrast, may be more ambush-oriented. Their bulkier bodies suggest slower cruising speeds, more reliance on waiting than chasing. Instead of darting after prey, they may hover silently, conserving energy, and then strike with overwhelming force when something comes close enough. In the deep sea, where calories are precious, this strategy may be more efficient. The comparison continues when we look at reproduction. Both are cephalopods, and like most cephalopods, they likely reproduce once before dying. Males deliver spermatophores, packets of sperm, to females, who later fertilize and release eggs. But because giant squids have been studied slightly more, we know more about their reproductive systems than those of colossal squids. With colossal squids, the details are still guesswork. Do they release their eggs in long strings like some squid species? Do they anchor them to the sea floor or let them drift in the current? No one knows for certain. The darkness and remoteness of their habitat keep these behaviours hidden. Culturally, the two squids have also occupied different spaces. The giant squid has dominated myths and media for centuries. Jules Verne imagined it in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Countless movies and novels depict it as the kraken, the ship crusher, the terror of the deep. The colossal squid, by contrast, only entered popular awareness recently, with the high-profile capture of specimens in the early 2000s. It has not yet had centuries of storytelling behind it, but its reputation is growing. The phrase "colossal squid" now evokes something even more intimidating than the giant squid, a kind of upgrade on the legend. Comparing the two also highlights how little we know about either. For all the giant squid's fame, it was only photographed alive for the first time in 2004 and filmed alive in 2006. The colossal squid has never been filmed alive in its natural habitat. Both remain elusive, both evade our attempts to study them, and both remind us that size doesn't always equal visibility. We might expect animals this large to be easy to track, but in the deep sea, even giants can vanish. There's also the question of maximum size. Which species grows larger overall? In length, the giant squid wins, stretching to over 12 or even 13 meters in some estimates. In weight, the colossal squid dominates, with the heavier specimens tipping the scales at over half a ton. Which is more impressive depends on perspective. To some, length is the measure of a giant. To others, mass is what counts. In truth, both are extraordinary in their own ways. Two different answers to the same evolutionary challenge: how to survive in a world of darkness, pressure, and predators. When you think about these differences, it becomes clear why scientists separate them so carefully. They're not just variations of the same animal, they're distinct strategies, distinct adaptations, distinct lives. The giant squid is a long, elegant hunter, built for reach and pursuit. The colossal squid is a stocky powerhouse, built for ambush and brute force. Both are giants, but in different ways, shaped by the pressures of their particular environments. And perhaps the most fascinating part of this comparison is that it reminds us how diverse the deep ocean really is. We often talk about the squid as if there's just one great mystery. In truth, there are many, each with its own story. The giant squid has one, the colossal squid another, and countless smaller species add their own variations. To place them side by side is to see the ocean not as a single dark void, but as a world full of different solutions to the problem of survival. In the end, comparing the giant squid and the colossal squid isn't about deciding which is greater. It's about appreciating that nature has given us two different legends, each remarkable, each unique. The giant squid is the myth we've known for centuries, the long-armed ghost that haunted sailors' imaginations. The colossal squid is the newer revelation, the heavyweight lurking in Antarctic waters, still mostly unseen. Together they remind us that the ocean is vast enough to hold not just one monster, but many, and that sometimes the truth is generous enough to give us more than we expected. When people hear about the colossal squid, one question seems to rise above all the rest: just how big can it get? The name itself invites that curiosity. Colossal suggests enormity beyond imagination, something that dwarfs every other creature of its kind. But the answer is not as simple as listing a number. It's a story about biology, about the strange rules of the deep ocean, about fragments of evidence gathered from whale stomachs and fishing nets, and about how scientists cautiously try to measure an animal that refuses to reveal itself fully. The largest confirmed colossal squid ever studied weighed about 495 kilograms, with a mantle length of over 4 meters and arms and tentacles extending even farther. That specimen, preserved in New Zealand in 2007, is the one most people have seen in photographs and news articles. It is already a giant by any standard, heavier than a grand piano, longer than a car, and armed with hooks and a beak strong enough to scar whales. But scientists know this individual is not necessarily the largest. In fact, beak measurements recovered from sperm whale stomachs suggest there are colossal squids significantly larger than the 2007 specimen. Some estimates push the maximum weight to 600 or even 700 kilograms, with total length stretching toward 10 meters. How do scientists make these estimates? The key lies in the beak. Because beaks are durable, they survive long after the rest of the squid has been digested. Researchers can measure the lower rostral length, the sharp, cutting portion of the beak, and use formulas derived from known specimens to estimate the total body size. It's not exact, but it provides a reliable range. Some beaks found in whales are larger than any belonging to the squids we've actually captured. suggesting that somewhere in the dark there are individuals larger than any we've seen. The ocean, after all, tends to hide its biggest creatures until chance brings them to us. The growth of colossal squids is also shaped by their environment. In the cold waters of the Southern Ocean, metabolism is slow, food is scarce, and energy conservation is vital. This means colossal squids probably grow gradually over many years. Unlike shallow water cephalopods, which often live fast and die young, deep-sea squid may live longer lives, accumulating size over decades. Each meal adds a little more mass, each year stretching their weight upward, until eventually they reach sizes unmatched by any other invertebrate. But because we've never studied one from hatchling to adult, we don't know the timeline. Do they live 10 years, 20, perhaps more? Do they grow steadily, or in bursts when food is plentiful? These are questions that remain open. Comparisons with the giant squid are helpful here. Giant squids grow long, but not nearly as heavy. Their bodies are more slender, their tentacles stretched out into delicate whips that add length without adding much mass. Colossal squids, by contrast, pack on muscle. Their mantles are thick, their bodies bulky, their weight concentrated in a way that makes them more compact but denser. This means that while a giant squid might reach 12 or even 13 meters in total length, a colossal squid of 9 or 10 meters might outweigh it by hundreds of kilograms. In terms of biomass, the colossal squid is the true record holder. The possibility of even larger individuals lingers in scientific discussions. Could there be colossal squids over 800 kilograms, perhaps even a ton? The evidence so far doesn't rule it out, but it doesn't confirm it either. Beak sizes hint at giants beyond what we've measured, but scaling up too far risks stretching the data. Some scientists caution against imagining one-ton squids, noting that biology tends to impose limits. Muscles, organs, and circulation can only grow so far before efficiency breaks down. Oxygen transport becomes harder. Energy demands too high. At some point, size stops being an advantage and becomes a burden. The colossal squid may already be near that upper boundary. Still, the ocean has surprised us before. Whales were once thought to max out smaller than they are. Sharks too. Every time we assume we know the ceiling, nature has a way of pushing it higher. For the colossal squid, the fact that we have so few specimens means we're working with only a tiny sample. For all we know, the largest individuals avoid nets entirely, living and dying in the abyss without ever touching human awareness. If that's true, then our estimates may be conservative, and the real maximum might be greater than we imagine. Size in the deep sea often follows a strange pattern known as deep-sea gigantism. Many deep-sea species are larger than their shallow water relatives. Giant isopods compared to pillbugs, giant amphipods compared to shrimp, and of course colossal squid compared to ordinary squid. The reasons aren't fully understood. Some suggest it's due to slower metabolism in the cold, allowing animals to grow larger over longer lifespans. Others argue that size provides an advantage in a resource-scarce environment, allowing animals to store more energy and travel greater distances in search of food. For the colossal squid, both factors may play a role. Its bulk gives it reserves to endure long periods without feeding, while its slow growth means it can reach sizes other squid never approach. The squid's anatomy supports this. Its thick mantle isn't just muscle for movement. It also serves as a reservoir, storing energy in the form of ammonium-rich fluids that help maintain buoyancy. A larger body provides more space for this storage, making the squid more efficient in deep, cold waters. Its massive eyes, too, make more sense at larger sizes. The bigger the squid, the bigger the eye, the better it can detect predators. Growth in this case reinforces survival strategies on multiple levels. But growth also carries risks. Larger animals need more food, and in the deep sea, food is hard to come by. This means colossal squids must strike a balance. They can't grow endlessly, because at some point their energy demands would outstrip what they can reliably catch. The maximum size of the species is likely set by this balance between energy gained from prey and energy required to sustain the body. That's why the estimates around 600 to 700 kilograms may represent not just speculation, but the biological upper limit. Even so, the idea of an undiscovered supergiant lurking below persists in our imagination. It's partly because the deep sea encourages exaggeration. The absence of certainty leaves room for speculation. Every beak larger than the last fuels the belief that even bigger squids exist. Every scar on a whale larger than known sucker sizes suggests the possibility of undiscovered giants. And while scientists must be cautious, the public imagination is freer. To many, the colossal squid is the modern kraken not just because of its size, but because of the possibility that its true size is still hidden. Ultimately, the science of growth in colossal squids is a mix of hard evidence and unanswered questions. We know they are the heaviest invertebrates on Earth, with confirmed weights approaching 0.5 ton. We know beak evidence suggests larger individuals exist, perhaps nearing 700 kilograms. We know their growth is slow, shaped by the cold and scarcity of their environment. But beyond that, the details are guesswork. How long they live, how fast they grow, how large the very biggest individuals become, all of it remains uncertain. And maybe that uncertainty is part of the allure. If we knew their exact maximum size, if we had filmed one in full, the mystery would shrink. Instead, we live with fragments, a 0.5 ton specimen in a tank, oversized beaks in whale stomachs, scars that hint at even bigger animals. These fragments leave space for wonder, for speculation, for the thought that somewhere in the abyss, larger squids are moving right now, unseen, larger than anything we've yet confirmed. That's the science of growth when it comes to the colossal squid. It's not a final answer, but a process of constant revision, built from scraps of evidence and cautious extrapolation. Each discovery inches us closer, but the full truth remains submerged, as hidden as the animals themselves. Until we capture a truly massive specimen, or find a way to observe them in the wild, we will continue to ask the same question sailors once asked in different words. How big can they get, eh? When we think about predators, we often imagine speed and ferocity. Lions charging across grasslands, sharks slicing through water, falcons diving at impossible speeds. But the colossal squid forces us to rethink that image. This is not a hunter built for pursuit or open displays of strength. It is something different, a predator shaped by silence, patience, and darkness. We have never filmed one hunting, never observed the act directly. What we know comes from anatomy, from comparisons to related species, from the scars left on whales, and from the logic of survival in the deep sea. From these fragments, we piece together an image of the colossal squid as a silent hunter, waiting in the abyss for its chance to strike. To understand how it might hunt, we start with the environment. The colossal squid lives in the bathypelagic zone, where light is absent and food is scarce. Here, active pursuit is costly. Every burst of energy is a gamble. If the squid misses, the calories burned may not be replaced quickly. That's why scientists suspect the colossal squid is an ambush predator. Its heavy, muscular mantle and stocky proportions suggest power over speed. A body designed not for long-distance chasing, but for short, decisive movements. In the darkness, the squid likely hovers, conserving energy, waiting for prey to drift close. When the opportunity comes, it strikes with overwhelming force, using its arms, tentacles, hooks, and beak to subdue its target. The anatomy supports this idea. The colossal squid's arms are lined with powerful suckers capable of gripping with immense strength. Its two long tentacles end in clubs armed with swiveling hooks. Some of these hooks rotate, biting deeper into flesh, while others remain fixed, anchoring prey securely. Unlike the giant squid, which relies on suction alone, the colossal squid adds a cutting, tearing element to its arsenal. This means that when it strikes, it doesn't just hold, It wounds, immediately disabling its victim. In an environment where escape into the blackness is always possible, injuring prey quickly is essential. The beak then delivers the final blow, sharp, curved, and reinforced with chitin. It slices through flesh with efficiency. Behind it lies the radula, a tongue-like organ studded with rows of microscopic teeth, which helps shred the food before passing it into the esophagus. This combination of hooks, suckers, and beak creates a perfect system. Capture, wound, immobilize, consume. Everything about it is tuned for precision and lethality. But the colossal squid's hunting strategy isn't only about weapons. Its sensory adaptations matter just as much. The enormous eyes, the largest in the animal kingdom, are thought to serve dual purposes. They can detect the faint bioluminescent disturbances caused by prey moving in the dark, giving the squid the advantage of the long-range detection. They can also spot the glowing wake of a sperm whale, its main predator, allowing the squid to retreat before becoming a target itself. For hunting, this means the squid can see prey before the prey sees it, positioning itself to strike from concealment. Beyond sight, the squid's arms are covered with chemoreceptors, sensory structures that allow it to taste the water and detect chemicals released by potential prey. This means it doesn't have to rely solely on vision. Even in absolute darkness, even if the prey gives off no light, the squid can sense its presence through chemical trails. Combined with its ability to remain motionless for long periods, this makes the colossal squid a predator of stealth rather than spectacle. So what does it eat? Evidence from stomach contents and indirect studies suggests large fish like the Antarctic toothfish, smaller squid, and possibly even sharks. These are not small, easy targets. They are powerful, fast-moving animals. To catch them, the squid must be efficient. It cannot afford to chase endlessly. Instead, it probably positions itself strategically, perhaps near migration routes or areas where prey is concentrated. When a fish passes within range, the squid extends its tentacles in a sudden strike, hooks sinking in, arms pulling the prey inward toward the beak. The entire attack may take only seconds, a burst of violence in an otherwise silent world. Some researchers suggest the colossal squid may use bioluminescence in its hunting strategy. If it possesses light-producing organs, it might use them to lure prey closer, imitating the faint glow of smaller creatures. Many deep-sea predators use this trick, dangling lights like fishing lures to attract victims. Whether the colossal squid does this remains unconfirmed, but the possibility is intriguing. In the darkness, light is both bait and camouflage, a way to control the battlefield. Speculation also surrounds how often the colossal squid feeds. Given its massive size, one might assume it needs constant meals. But in the cold, slow-moving environment of the Southern Ocean, metabolism is reduced. The squid likely feeds less frequently than shallow water relatives, storing energy in its large, muscular mantle. A single large meal, a fish several feet long, might sustain it for days or even weeks. This reduces the need for constant hunting and reinforces the ambush strategy. Instead of expending energy daily, the squid can wait, strike rarely, but strike effectively. Another aspect of its hunting behaviour may be its relationship with sperm whales. While whales are predators of colossal squids, the squid's resistance may influence its tactics. Knowing that whales are constant threats, the squid may choose ambush locations carefully, staying near areas that provide some concealment or where whale sonar is less effective. Its massive eyes may allow it to spot the glowing disturbance of a whale from afar, retreating before the predator closes in. Hunting in such a dangerous world means balancing aggression with caution, seizing opportunities without drawing unwanted attention. It's also possible that colossal squids hunt vertically as well as horizontally. Many deep-sea fish migrate upward at night, following plankton toward the surface and retreating during the day. The squid may track these migrations, moving with the fish into shallower waters under cover of darkness, then descending again at dawn. If so, this would give it access to more prey, while still keeping it hidden from view. Some accidental captures in fishing nets suggest that colossal squids occasionally approach depths as shallow as a few hundred meters, though this is rare. Such movements may be tied to feeding cycles, opportunistic forays into prey-rich zones. Because we've never observed a colossal squid in the wild, much of this remains informed guesswork. But guesswork guided by anatomy and ecology is often accurate. When scientists pieced together the hunting strategies of giant squids, the predictions matched well with the first footage captured in the 2000s. The colossal squid may one day surprise us, but for now, the evidence strongly supports a predator that relies on stealth, patience, and overwhelming force. What's striking is how different this makes it from our usual image of predators. The colossal squid doesn't need speed like a shark, or coordination like wolves, or numbers like lions. It thrives in silence. It waits, senses, and strikes. Its success doesn't come from spectacle, but from efficiency. And that efficiency, honed by millions of years of evolution, makes it one of the most formidable hunters in the deep sea. And yet, despite its arsenal, it is not invincible. The scars on sperm whales, the beaks in their stomachs, remind us that the hunter is also hunted. Its tactics are shaped not only by the prey it seeks, but by the predators it evades. The silence of its hunting is also the silence of its survival strategy. In the abyss, to make noise, to reveal yourself, is to invite death. To remain phantom, to strike rarely and decisively, is to endure. That's why, when we imagine the colossal squid, we should not picture a creature in constant pursuit. We should picture it suspended in the black water, still as stone, waiting with patience we can hardly comprehend. Hours, days, perhaps weeks might pass between strikes, and then, in an instant, hooks dig in, a beak slices, and the meal is claimed. That is the life of a silent hunter, a life shaped not by constant action but by perfect timing. The colossal squid is not just remarkable because of its size or its mystery. What makes it even more extraordinary is that it thrives in a place where conditions are so extreme that almost nothing else of comparable size can survive. The depths it inhabits are not simply dark and cold, they are crushing. To live at 1,000 to 2,000 meters beneath the surface is to endure pressures unimaginable to us, pressures that would crush submarines not built for the task and kill a human instantly. Yet the colossal squid is not only able to withstand it, it has evolved to depend on it. It is, in every sense, a creature of adaptation. The first challenge is pressure itself. At sea level, we live under one atmosphere of pressure. For every 10 meters you descend in the ocean, the pressure increases by another atmosphere. At 1,000 meters, that's 100 times the pressure at the surface. At 2,000 meters, it doubles. Imagine the weight of hundreds of cars pressing down on every square inch of your body. That's the constant reality of the colossal squid's world. For most creatures, pressure like that would collapse cells, crush structures, and prevent basic life functions. But the squid's anatomy is designed for it. One of the most important adaptations is the absence of bones. Unlike whales or fish with skeletons, squids are soft-bodied. They don't have rigid structures that can collapse under weight. Their muscles and tissues are flexible, able to adjust to external pressure without breaking. This makes them naturally suited for deep-sea living. What would kill us instantly is simply equilibrium for them. The pressure inside their bodies matches the pressure outside, eliminating the crushing effect we would experience. In a sense, they are creatures shaped by pressure rather than resisting it. Their circulatory system also plays a role. Like other cephalopods, the colossal squid has 3 hearts. 2 branchial hearts pump blood through the gills, while a central systemic heart pumps it through the rest of the body. Its blood is not red like ours, but blue, coloured by hemocyanin rather than hemoglobin. Hemocyanin is based on copper instead of iron. and it is especially efficient at carrying oxygen in cold, low-oxygen environments. At the surface, hemoglobin is superior, but in the abyss, hemocyanin gives the squid an edge. Every beat of its 3 hearts ensures that oxygen reaches tissues even when the water is frigid and thin in resources. This adaptation is critical because the abyss isn't just high pressure, it's low in oxygen. Many deep-sea animals struggle to extract enough to survive, but the colossal squid, with its copper-based blood, can endure. Its metabolism is likely slow, conserving energy. Each cell operates efficiently, squeezing every drop of oxygen out of the water passing over its gills. This efficiency allows it not only to live in the depths, but to reach massive size, something few invertebrates can achieve in such conditions. Temperature is another challenge. The Southern Ocean is near freezing year-round, often dipping to -1 or 2 degrees Celsius. Cold like that slows biochemical reactions. Most animals would struggle to generate enough energy to function, but the colossal squid's enzymes, proteins and cellular structures are adapted to work in cold conditions. Its metabolism may be slower, but it is tuned to cold, allowing steady survival rather than collapse. Some researchers suggest that this slow pace of life is one of the reasons the squid grows so large. With growth stretched across many years, fueled by slow but steady energy intake, the result is a creature that towers over its relatives. Even buoyancy reflects adaptation. In shallow water squids, buoyancy is often regulated by swimming and active control. For the colossal squid, constantly moving at great depth would be energetically expensive. Instead, it relies on chemical adaptations. Its tissues contain high concentrations of ammonium chloride, a substance less dense than seawater. This gives the squid neutral buoyancy, allowing it to float effortlessly in the water column without expending energy. The effect is eerie, an animal hundreds of kilograms in weight, suspended silently in black water as though weightless. This adaptation makes its ambush strategy possible. Without it, the squid would sink to the bottom or be forced to swim constantly to stay afloat, burning more energy than it could replace. But buoyancy has trade-offs. Ammonium chloride isn't just lighter than seawater, it also tastes unpleasant to predators. Some scientists believe this gives the colossal squid an additional layer of defense. While sperm whales certainly still eat them, other predators may find them less palatable. It's not enough to deter a whale, but in the deep sea, every small advantage counts. The very substance that lets the squid float may also make it a less desirable meal for some would-be hunters. Adaptations to pressure are not only physical but also behavioural. In the deep, energy is scarce. The colossal squid's lifestyle reflects this. Instead of constant activity, it waits. Instead of rapid pursuits, it delivers sudden, decisive strikes. Everything about its behaviour conserves energy while maximising efficiency. Pressure, in this way, shapes not only its body but its strategy for survival. Even its eyes, already the largest in the animal kingdom, are part of the adaptation. At first glance, their enormous size might seem like overkill in the dark. But in the abyss, where light is scarce, every photon matters. The colossal squid's eyes are tuned to capture faint glows, particularly the bioluminescent disturbances caused by large animals moving through the water. This gives it advance warning of predators like sperm whales. In a world where pressure prevents rapid movement and escape, having time to react is everything. The eyes are a pressure adaptation too, not to resist crushing weight, but to manage survival under the constraints it creates. Perhaps the most striking thing about the colossal squid's adaptations is how they all connect. The soft body resists crushing. The blue blood carries oxygen efficiently. The ammonium-filled tissues provide buoyancy. The massive eyes detect danger in advance. The slow metabolism stretches out energy use. All of it fits together, a web of solutions to problems most animals never face. Taken individually, each adaptation is clever. Taken together, They're a masterpiece of survival in extreme conditions. It's easy to think of the abyss as hostile, a place where life barely clings on. But for the colossal squid, it is home. Its body is not built to survive anywhere else. Bring it to the surface and it dies quickly, unable to cope with the absence of pressure, the abundance of light, the difference in temperature. It doesn't belong in our world any more than we belong in its. Its existence is possible only in the crushing dark. That's what makes it not just remarkable, but humbling. It shows us how flexible life can be, how it bends to the most extreme conditions and turns them into opportunities. We often think of adaptation in terms of struggle, how hard it must be to survive in the deep. But perhaps for the colossal squid, the abyss isn't a burden. Perhaps it is comfort. Everything about it is tuned for that life. It doesn't have to resist the pressure, because it was born into it. It doesn't have to fight the cold, because its very chemistry is made for it. It doesn't need to light the dark, because its eyes and senses are crafted for shadows. In this way, the abyss is not a challenge but a perfect fit. Where we would see death, the squid finds ease, and maybe that is the final lesson of adaptation. To us, the colossal squid is a phantom, a legend, a creature of extremes. To itself, it is simply alive, doing what it was made to do. The pressure we fear is the pressure it calls normal. The darkness we find terrifying is the canvas it has always known. It is not surviving against the odds. It is thriving in the only world it was meant to inhabit. For most of human history, the colossal squid has existed more in imagination than in reality. Before it had a name, before scientists even knew it was real, people told stories of sea monsters, leviathans and krakens. Sailors returning from long voyages described creatures with tentacles as thick as masts, eyes that glowed in the dark, bodies that could wrap around entire ships. These tales were often exaggerated, mixed with fear, weathered by rumour and retelling. But they served a purpose. They gave form to the unknown. For sailors navigating endless oceans, the idea that something vast and powerful might live below the surface was both terrifying and strangely comforting. It made sense of the mystery of the sea. The fear came first. For centuries, the ocean was viewed as a place of danger, chaos, and unpredictability. Storms could appear suddenly, ships could vanish without explanation, and strange animals sometimes washed ashore, their forms so alien that people didn't know how to categorize them. When fragments of giant squid or colossal squid drifted onto beaches, decomposed and distorted, they looked monstrous. Long, rubbery arms seemed unnatural. Beaks hidden among the remains seemed grotesque. Without scientific knowledge, the simplest explanation was that these were monsters, threats lurking in the deep. Writers and artists drew on these stories. The kraken became a recurring figure in European folklore. Descriptions varied. Sometimes it was imagined as a giant octopus, other times as a many-armed serpent, still other times as an island-sized beast whose back could be mistaken for land. In every version, though, it was terrifying. Ships were pulled down, crews were lost, and the message was clear. The ocean was not ours to control. This wasn't just entertainment. It was a reflection of the relationship people had with the sea, a relationship of awe and fear. But fascination was always mixed in. The same sailors who feared sea monsters also spoke of them with a kind of wonder. To imagine that the ocean could hide such creatures was to admit that the world was larger and stranger than anyone realized. Myths of colossal squid-like beasts fed human curiosity, inspiring explorers, naturalists, and eventually scientists to search for proof. When early naturalists began cataloguing life, they looked at whale stomachs, beached remains, and the occasional carcass tangled in nets, hoping to confirm that the monsters were real. In a way, imagination paved the path for science. As time went on, and the reality of giant squids became clearer, the imagination surrounding them shifted. In the 19th century, naturalists like Peter Steenstrup showed that the giant squid was not a myth, but a real species. Soon after, fragments of colossal squids were described as well. Instead of killing the legend, this discovery transformed it. The fear remained, but now it was directed toward a real animal rather than a myth. Suddenly, the terrifying stories seemed plausible. If a squid could grow to 10 meters long, if its beak could be found in the whale stomachs, then perhaps the old stories weren't exaggerations at all. Popular culture ran with the idea. Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea made the giant squid famous in literature. Illustrations of tentacled monsters attacking ships became common. The colossal squid, though lesser known at the time, was folded into the same category in the public mind. The ocean was full of monsters, and we had barely scratched the surface. The fear persisted, but so did the fascination. These animals symbolized the unknown, the idea that even in an age of exploration, mysteries remained. The balance began to shift more toward fascination as science advanced. By the late 20th and early 21st centuries, when specimens of colossal squid were finally recovered intact, the public reaction was not horror, but awe. Newspapers carried headlines about real-life sea monsters, but the tone was more excited than fearful. People wanted to see them, not avoid them. Museums displayed preserved specimens to crowds of visitors eager to stand in front of the animal once thought to exist only in myth. Instead of symbolizing danger, the colossal squid became a symbol of discovery. This change reflects a broader cultural shift in how humans think about the unknown. In earlier centuries, the unknown was frightening. Sea monsters were warnings, reasons to avoid venturing too far. But today, the unknown is intriguing. We want to find what lies in the deep, not escape it. The colossal squid embodies that curiosity. Its rarity makes it special, its size makes it impressive, and its mystery makes it irresistible. We no longer fear it as a ship-sinking kraken. We marvel at it as proof that the ocean still holds secrets. Still, the line between fear and fascination isn't completely erased. The colossal squid is unsettling because it reminds us of how alien the deep sea is. Its eyes are larger than any other animal's, its hooks are sharper than knives, its beak can slice through flesh with ease. Standing in front of a preserved specimen, people often describe a mix of awe and unease. It doesn't look like something from our world. It looks like something from another planet. That tension between wonder and discomfort is part of why it captures the imagination so strongly. Media continues to play on both aspects. Documentaries present the colossal squid as a marvel of evolution, a creature of adaptation. Movies and novels, on the other hand, sometimes still cast it as a monster, using its size and mystery as shorthand for terror. Both images coexist. In children's books, the squid is often portrayed as friendly or misunderstood, a giant but gentle creature of the deep. In horror films, it is the lurking menace, waiting to drag submarines into the dark. The same animal can inspire both comfort and fear, depending on how the imagination frames it. The fascination also extends into science fiction. Writers and filmmakers use the colossal squid as a model for imagining extraterrestrial life. Its anatomy, soft-bodied, hook-armed, giant-eyed, feels alien compared to most land animals we know. If life can take such a form here on Earth, the argument goes, then who knows what shapes it might take elsewhere? The colossal squid becomes more than an animal. It becomes a symbol of possibility, proof that nature can produce designs far beyond our expectations. And in that sense, the colossal squid has a unique place in human imagination. It bridges myth and science, fear and fascination, the past and the future. It is a reminder of the stories we told when we didn't understand the sea, and a reminder that even now, when we know so much more, mystery still remains. It keeps alive the idea that the world is larger than we can see, that there are still wonders waiting to be discovered. What's remarkable is how often the colossal squid appears in art, literature and conversation for an animal so rarely encountered. Most people will never see one in person. Most scientists will never study one directly, yet its image is everywhere, on museum walls, in novels, in films, in the imaginations of children who hear the word colossal and instantly think of something vast and powerful. Few animals have so successfully bridged the gap between reality and legend. From fear to fascination, the colossal squid has carried us on a journey of perspective. Once it was the terrifying kraken, the sea monster sailors dreaded. Now it is the awe-inspiring phantom of the abyss, the proof that Earth still has places beyond our reach. The fear has not vanished entirely, but it has softened, reshaped into respect. And the fascination has only grown stronger, as each new discovery reminds us how much more there is to learn. So when we think of the colossal squid today, we no longer picture only a threat. We picture a marvel, a survivor of the abyss, a creature that has turned human fear into human wonder. It is, in the end, both. A reminder of our ancient terror of the deep and a symbol of our enduring desire to explore it. When it comes to the colossal squid, what stands out as much as what we know is how much we still don't. For every question answered by a specimen hauled up from the Antarctic, or a beak retrieved from a whale's stomach, 10 new questions appear. It is an animal defined as much by mystery as by biology, a reminder that in an age of satellites, genetic sequencing, and constant connectivity, the ocean still holds entire chapters unwritten. The colossal squid is not the only mystery of the deep, but it is one of the most powerful symbols of just how much remains hidden from us. One of the biggest gaps in our knowledge is behaviour. We know almost nothing about how the colossal squid actually lives its day-to-day life. Does it drift in solitary silence, or does it cross paths with others of its kind more often than we imagine? Do they interact socially, or are they loners, coming together only to reproduce? We don't know if they fight over territory, if they migrate seasonally, or if they display patterns of activity tied to the cycles of prey in the Southern Ocean. Everything about their daily rhythms is a blank page. Reproduction is another enormous mystery. In most cephalopods, reproduction is a dramatic, defining event. Males use specialised arms to transfer spermatophores to females, who later fertilise their eggs and release them into the water. But with colossal squids, we've never observed the process. We don't know how males and females find each other in the dark expanse of the Antarctic depths. We don't know how many eggs a female lays, how large the egg masses are, or how long it takes them to develop. We don't know if hatchlings drift with currents, vulnerable to predators, or if they grow quickly enough to escape danger. The entire life cycle remains speculative, based only on comparisons with other squid. Then there's the question of lifespan. How long does a colossal squid live? Some scientists guess around 10 years, others say 20 or more. We have no confirmed data. Growth rings in squid beaks can sometimes be used to estimate age, but with so few specimens it's difficult to be certain. If they do live decades, then their size makes more sense. Slow growth, stretched over many years, fueled by the sparse resources of the abyss, but without more evidence, we're left guessing. Even their diet, though partly understood, has huge unknowns. We suspect they prey on Antarctic toothfish, smaller squid, and other large fish. But what else? Do they specialise in certain species, or do they eat whatever they can catch? Do they hunt actively at certain depths or times of year? How often do they eat? No one has ever filmed a colossal squid hunting. No one has ever watched it feed in the wild. The stomach contents of the few specimens we have are too limited to paint a full picture. Migration is another blank space. Do colossal squids stay in one region their whole lives, or do they roam across the Southern Ocean? Do they follow prey migrations, or are they relatively sedentary? Tagging would provide answers, but tagging requires live animals, and so far no one has managed to capture and release one alive. Without direct tracking, we don't know how far they travel, how deep they go, or whether they have seasonal patterns of movement. The population size is also unknown. Are colossal squids relatively rare, or are they more common than we think, simply hidden by depth and darkness? Sperm whale diets suggest they're abundant enough to sustain large whale populations, which means there could be tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands living unseen in the Southern Ocean. But we don't have firm numbers. Unlike surface animals, they can't be counted or surveyed. Every estimate is speculative. The ocean doesn't give up its census easily. Even their predators beyond sperm whales are uncertain. We know whales eat them, leaving behind scars and beaks. But what about sleeper sharks, or other large deep-sea hunters? Could smaller individuals fall prey to seals or fish when they venture into shallower waters? Could hatchlings be eaten by birds or penguins before they sink into the depths? These are possibilities, but we lack evidence. Predation in the abyss is rarely observed, leaving much of the ecological web invisible to us. The limits of their size are another ongoing question. We have measurements of specimens around 500 kilograms, and beak evidence suggesting squids up to 600 or 700 kilograms. But is that the maximum? Could they reach even larger sizes, perhaps close to a ton? Biology suggests there are limits, but the deep has surprised us before. Until we see more individuals, the true ceiling of their growth remains unknown. The ocean holds its giants close, revealing them only reluctantly. We also don't know how climate change is affecting them. The Southern Ocean is warming, currents are shifting, and ice is melting. These changes ripple through the ecosystem, altering the availability of fish like the Antarctic toothfish. If prey declines, what happens to colossal squid populations? Do they adapt, switch diets, migrate, or decline? With so little baseline knowledge, it's almost impossible to predict. The colossal squid could be resilient, or it could be vulnerable in ways we don't yet see. In either case, our lack of information is a problem. Perhaps the greatest unknown of all is what it looks like to see a colossal squid alive in its natural habitat. We have preserved specimens, pieces of anatomy, and indirect evidence. But we've never filmed one free and unrestrained in the abyss, moving through its world with the grace and silence of a true deep-sea hunter. What does it look like to watch it hover, waiting for prey? How does it move when it strikes? Does it pulse slowly through the dark, or does it drift nearly still until action is necessary? Seeing it alive in the wild would answer dozens of questions at once, but so far the abyss has kept that moment from us. All of these unknowns are frustrating for scientists, but they are also a source of wonder. In a time when we know the surface of Mars better than the deep ocean, the colossal squid stands as a reminder of how much remains to be discovered. It keeps alive the possibility that the world still holds mysteries, that not everything has been catalogued, dissected, and explained. It gives us a reason to keep looking, and maybe that is why the colossal squid fascinates us so much. It is not only what we know, the hooks, the beak, the eyes, the weight, but what we don't. The gaps in our knowledge make space for imagination. They connect us back to the sailors who told stories of krakens and leviathans, who filled the unknown with monsters. The difference is that now we know the animal is real, and the mystery lies not in whether it exists, but in what it is really like. The ocean is full of unwritten pages. The colossal squid occupies some of the most intriguing ones. As technology improves, we may fill in those pages with facts and observations. But until then, the mystery remains part of its identity. It is not just a squid, it is a question, a puzzle, a story unfinished. And that perhaps is the most powerful truth of all. That even now, with so much knowledge at our fingertips, the world still holds secrets deep enough to humble us. When people think of the colossal squid, it is rarely just as another animal. Whales may be admired for their intelligence, sharks for their strength, lions for their dominance, but the colossal squid occupies a different place in our imagination. It is not just a species, it is a symbol. It represents something far larger than itself, something tied to the ocean, to mystery, to fear, and to wonder. In its very existence, it becomes shorthand for the abyss, the parts of the world still hidden, the things we can't quite reach. the questions we can't yet answer. Part of its symbolic weight comes from its invisibility. The colossal squid lives in a place we cannot go easily, a realm of darkness and pressure where even our machines struggle. It represents the frontier, the reminder that there are still places on Earth that resist exploration. In an age where maps are precise and satellites see everything from above, the squid says, not everything is charted, not everything has been tamed. It carries the weight of the unknown, not as a vague idea, but as a living creature that proves mystery still thrives. It also symbolizes scale. Humans measure ourselves against other creatures constantly. We look at elephants and marvel at their bulk. We measure blue whales as the largest animals ever to live. We stand next to dinosaur skeletons in museums and try to imagine their presence. The colossal squid fits into that tradition, a giant that stretches our sense of possibility. Its eyes are bigger than dinner plates, its body heavier than cars, its hook sharp enough to gouge whales. It embodies the idea that life can reach staggering sizes in places we least expect it. To think of it is to remember that the ocean can still produce monsters, not mythical ones, but real giants of flesh and blood. At the same time, it represents fragility. For all its size and strength, the colossal squid is soft-bodied. It lacks bones. It dies quickly when removed from its pressure-filled world. It is both massive and delicate, a paradox that resonates with us. It reminds us that size is not invulnerability, that even the largest creatures have vulnerabilities shaped by their environment. In this way, it symbolizes balance, the idea that every advantage comes with trade-offs, every power with a cost. Culturally, it represents fear transformed into awe. For centuries, tentacled monsters symbolized the terror of the unknown sea. They were the embodiments of human anxieties about what lurked beneath the waves. To sailors, they were omens of disaster, proof that the ocean could not be trusted. Today, the colossal squid still carries some of that edge, but it is softened by fascination. Now it symbolizes wonder, curiosity, the thrill of discovery. The same creature that once stood for danger now stands for mystery, showing how imagination evolves as knowledge grows. For science, it represents humility. Every specimen, every beak, every scar on a whale reminds researchers how little we know. The colossal squid defies our usual methods. We can't tag it, can't observe it directly, can't film it in its natural habitat. It symbolizes the limits of our technology, the fact that even with submarines and satellites and genetic sequencing, we are still blind in the face of some mysteries. It is a living reminder that science is not omnipotent, that patience and persistence are still required, that some answers take decades or centuries to uncover. It also symbolizes adaptation. To live in the abyss is to solve problems most creatures never face: crushing pressure, constant cold, endless dark. The colossal squid's body is a testament to those solutions. 3 hearts, blue blood, ammonium-filled tissues for buoyancy, hooks instead of suction alone, eyes evolved to see what nothing else can see. Every detail is an answer to the question of how to survive in a world hostile to almost everything else. In this way, it represents resilience, the creativity of evolution, the possibility of life thriving in extremes. On a deeper level, the colossal squid represents something profoundly human, our fascination with what lies beyond our reach. It is the same impulse that drives us to look at the stars, to send probes to Mars, to wonder about life on other planets. The squid is not an alien, but it might as well be. It is a creature that feels foreign, otherworldly, existing in a place as inaccessible to us as any distant planet. To study it is to practice the same curiosity that fuels space exploration. The abyss is our inner space, and the squid is its ambassador. In literature and art, it represents chaos and the unknown. Tentacled creatures have long been used as metaphors for things too vast to control: corporations, empires, storms, even human fear itself. The colossal squid, by virtue of being real, grounds those metaphors. It proves that such creatures are not only inventions of imagination, but actual parts of the natural world. When artists draw inspiration from it, they are tapping into a deep well of symbolism, the idea of something hidden, immense, and powerful moving just out of sight. It also represents the deep sea itself. Mention the colossal squid, and people instantly picture black water, pressure, and mystery. It is not simply a species. It is the face we give to the abyss. Just as the polar bear represents the Arctic and the camel the desert, the colossal squid has become the emblem of the deep ocean. When people want to imagine the most alien, least understood part of our planet, the squid is often the creature they choose. There is even symbolic weight in what we lack. The fact that no one has filmed it alive in its habitat, the fact that so much about it remains unknown, makes it a symbol of incompleteness. It reminds us that human knowledge is not finished, that there are still blank spaces on the map. In an age when information feels instant and total, the colossal squid represents what resists instant answers. It tells us that mystery has not been eliminated. It still exists and it still matters. And beyond fear, fascination, humility, and adaptation, the colossal squid symbolizes wonder itself. The wonder that comes from knowing such a creature exists. The wonder that comes from imagining what it looks like alive in the abyss. The wonder that comes from realizing we share a planet with something so massive, so strange, and yet so real. It represents the part of us that never stops asking questions, never stops imagining, never stops searching for what lies just beyond sight. So when we speak of the colossal squid, we're not just describing an animal, we're describing a symbol of the ocean's depths, of mystery, of resilience, of curiosity, of the balance between fear and fascination. It is a mirror reflecting how humans have always thought about the unknown, first with terror, then with awe, and now with a mix of both. It represents the abyss, but it also represents us, the way we project our questions onto the dark, the way we fill silence with stories, the way we chase knowledge even when it hides from us. And maybe that is its greatest role. Not just as a predator in the deep, not just as prey for whales, but as a symbol of mystery itself. The colossal squid embodies the parts of the world that remain unwritten, the questions that keep us wondering, the reminders that Earth is still wild. In it we see not only a creature of the abyss, but the abyss itself. Vast, dark, humbling, and endlessly captivating. As we come to the end of this long journey into the world of the colossal squid, what lingers most is not what we know, but how much remains hidden. The colossal squid is one of the largest invertebrates on Earth, a predator armed with hooks, a beak that can cut through flesh, and eyes the size of dinner plates. It has been confirmed by specimens pulled from the deep, by beaks found in whale stomachs, by scars etched into the skin of sperm whales. It is real. It is here, and yet it still feels like a phantom. Think of how we've encountered it, rarely on our own terms, almost always by accident. A piece of tentacle washed ashore, a beak lodged in a whale's gut, a damaged body hauled up by a fishing vessel, a preserved specimen on display in a museum tank. Each moment of contact has been fleeting, incomplete, never the whole story. Even the most famous specimen, the half-ton individual preserved in New Zealand, tells us only what a colossal squid looks like when dead, not how it behaves when alive. The animal itself remains out of reach, hidden in the abyss it calls home. That is why it still feels like a phantom ruler. Ruler because it is one of the top invertebrate predators of the Southern Ocean, a hunter powerful enough to battle whales. Phantom because it rules unseen, slipping through darkness beyond the limits of our vision. It is both fact and mystery, both specimen and story. We know it exists, but we don't know it in the way we know most other creatures. We don't see it hunt, reproduce, migrate, or grow. We see only traces left behind, and yet, even in its absence, the colossal squid changes how we see the ocean. It reminds us that the sea is not empty. It is full of life so strange and vast that even now, in the 21st century, we are surprised by it. It tells us that exploration is not over, that there are still mysteries on our own planet as grand as anything we might hope to find in space. It is a symbol of how much remains to be discovered, a living question mark drifting in the deep. This phantom ruler also reflects something about us. The way we have imagined it over the centuries, first as a monster, then as a marvel, now as a subject of fascination, shows how human perception evolves. When we feared the ocean, we made it into the kraken. When we began to explore, we made it into a scientific challenge. Now, when we crave mystery, we make it into a symbol of wonder. The squid itself has not changed. It is what it always has been. What has changed is the lens through which we look. It reveals less about itself than it does about us, our fears, our curiosity, our hunger for discovery. What stands out most is how it lives in the spaces between myth and science, between fear and fascination, between seen and unseen. That's why it captivates us. It resists being put neatly into a category. It is not a myth, but it carries the aura of one. It is not unknown, but it remains largely unseen. It is not the largest animal in the sea, but it is among the most mysterious. It lives in the gap, and that gap is exactly where our imagination thrives. As science advances, some of these gaps will close. One day, perhaps, we will film a colossal squid alive in its natural habitat, drifting in the blackness, its tentacles unfolding as it strikes at prey. One day, perhaps, we will understand its life cycle, its migrations, its role in the Antarctic ecosystem. We may know how many exist, how long they live, how they reproduce. Each answer will add to the picture, filling in details where now there is only speculation. But even then, mystery will remain, because the deep sea is too vast, too complex to ever be fully known, and the colossal squid will always be part of that mystery, one of the ocean's reminders that some things are meant to stay partly in shadow. And maybe that is what makes it so powerful as a symbol. It is not just an animal we study, it is a reflection of our relationship with the unknown. It shows us that mystery is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. It shows us that discovery is not always about final answers, but about the pursuit itself. And it shows us that Earth, even now, is not finished revealing itself. So when we close our thoughts on the colossal squid, we do not close the story. The story is still being written. Every expedition to Antarctic waters, every whale stomach examined, every net pulled from the depths might add a new sentence. The ocean keeps its secrets, but it offers glimpses when it chooses, and each glimpse deepens the legend of the phantom ruler. In the end, the colossal squid represents more than itself. It represents the abyss, vast, dark, humbling. It represents life's ability to adapt to extremes, to survive where almost nothing else can. It represents human imagination, forever caught between fear and fascination. And it represents the unfinished book of the ocean, pages still blank, stories still waiting. We call it colossal, but the size is not the only thing that matters. What matters is the mystery. What matters is the reminder that some truths remain beyond our grasp. The colossal squid is not a monster. It is not a myth. It is something more powerful. It is proof that wonder is still alive in the world. And so, as we think of this phantom ruler drifting in the black water far below us, we're reminded that we do not know everything. We're reminded that the ocean still holds secrets too deep for us to see. And we're reminded that sometimes not knowing is the greatest gift, because it keeps our imagination alive, because it keeps us searching, because it keeps us humble. That is what the colossal squid is, not just a creature of the abyss, but a reminder of how vast the abyss truly is. Not just a ruler of the deep, but a phantom we may never fully know.